there, particularly northwestern Scotland, will see a decent amount of sunshine today, and it'll be a fine, pleasant day to come here. But underneath all that cloud, it is going to be feeling particularly cold for many of us. Temperatures really struggling to climb much above 4 to 6 degrees Celsius. Once we factor on the strength, though, of that easterly wind that's coming in from the North Sea, it's going to be feeling more like freezing for the vast majority of us. So certainly the thick coats will be needed when you're out and about today. We'll hold on to some of those clear spells across northwestern Scotland into this evening and overnight, but that does mean temperatures will drop off a touch here, so certainly some frost is possible during the forthcoming night. Elsewhere, we hold on to a lot of cloud, and so that will reduce the amount of frost we see elsewhere. Many of us will see temperatures mainly around 3 to 4 degrees Celsius. During Tuesday, it's a reasonably similar picture for many of us. Again, that easterly wind is still driving in those outbreaks of rain, wintry showers across eastern areas in particular. We might see some longer spells of rain just fringe into the far southeast, and also this feature that wants to push towards the Isles of Scilly in the southwest as well. Other areas in the west, again, have got the greater chance of seeing some slightly drier and brighter spells in there at times. But cloud really will be the main theme of the day. Temperatures still struggling at 6 to 7 degrees Celsius. That Scandinavian high is looking like it could stay with us right throughout the week. That will continue that cold theme as well. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boiler.
Don't miss your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. First, you'll win a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash to spend however you like. You'll also receive the very latest iPhone 16, and we'll send you on a shopping spree with £500 to spend in your favourite store. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 10th of February. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver. I'm here at one of the busiest junctions in London, central London, Whitehall, outside the Houses of Parliament. Whitehall's down there, Downing Street down there, as the farmers begin to arrive to protest against Labour's tax raid.
And we'll be with Emily throughout the programme, of course, but elsewhere, an illegal working crackdown. Thousands of migrants working illegally in nail bars, car washes and restaurants have been arrested as part of the government's efforts to tighten UK border security. Mark White has the story.
Well, just last month, the number of arrests for illegal workers rose by 73%. However, it's still a drop in the ocean compared to the estimated 1.5 million people working in the illegal economy.
And not another one. After the resignation of Health Minister Andrew Gwynn, today Labour's Chief Whip meets with young Labour MP Oliver Ryan, who was also in the offending Trigger Me Timbers WhatsApp group. The Burnley MP says his own comments were completely unacceptable. Now, Emily, we're expecting the tractors to arrive where you are this very hour. It's a big day for the farmers.
An absolutely massive day for farmers. This is the third protest like this with tractors that have descended on Whitehall in just 4 months, and we're expecting this one to be the biggest. There could be thousands of tractors descending in Whitehall in just 1 hour's time. We're also going to have tens of thousands of people coming from farms across the country and from the rural community as well as supporters of the farming industry. Now, you may well be able to see behind me that this is one of the busiest junctions in London. Huge amounts of activity going on, but it will come to a standstill. You can hear the farmers, the tractors already arriving. They're not allowed to stop quite yet, but here they are making their voices heard, seeing lots of no farmers, no food, no future. They're saying Rachel Reeves should stop and rethink this decision. I'll be here. Oh, that's very loud indeed. I'll be here all day reporting live.
Fantastic stuff, Emily. Great to see those first tractors arrive. Oh, it's the beginning of a big day of protest. But of course, your views are very welcome. gbnews.com/your say. Do write in with what you think about the programme throughout it. All to come after your latest news headlines.
Tom, Emily, thank you and good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 12. These are your top stories from the GB newsroom. Brief bit of breaking news this lunchtime. Ashley Dalton, the Labour MP for West Lancashire, has been appointed as a minister in the Department of Health and Social Care after Andrew Gwynn was sacked over the weekend. The appointment comes as the Chief Whip will meet with Labour MP Oliver Ryan today after an investigation was launched by the party into comments made in a WhatsApp group. The Member of Parliament for Burnley has apologised for unacceptable and deeply disappointing comments, which he deeply regrets and would not make today. Mr Ryan confirmed he was a member of the same WhatsApp group that featured racist and sexist messages that former Health Minister Andrew Gwynn was also a part of. Farmers from across the country are arriving in Westminster this afternoon in protest against the government's family farm tax. Hundreds of farmers and their tractors are gathering on the way to Parliament. The rally on Whitehall, organised by Save British Farming, comes as a petition calling to keep current inheritance tax exemptions for working farms has reached almost 150,000 signatures. That's set to be debated in the Commons this afternoon. Labour has previously insisted it will not make a U-turn on its plans to introduce a 20% inheritance tax rate on farms worth more than £1 million. They've also said that farmers are the backbone of Britain. Earlier this morning, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage spoke to Ellie and Eamon after speaking with farmers.
They feel, and some of these families have had farms for hundreds of years, they feel directly threatened by these proposed tax changes, and they're going to stand up and they're going to fight. And they're doing it here. We're in North London this morning. But this is beginning to happen all over the country, and I sense that we've got a great feeling in our country for the countryside. It's only like it is because it's been looked after and husbanded for centuries by people like this. So I think the public are getting on their side.
Elsewhere, 50-year-old Simon Vickers, who stabbed his 14-year-old daughter Scarlett in the heart while he claimed they were play fighting in their kitchen, has been jailed at Teesside Crown Court for life with a minimum term of 15 years after he was convicted of her murder. Delivering the sentence, Mr Justice Cotter said Vickers had never given a truthful explanation of what happened, saying the tragedy must have been down to Vickers losing his temper. He paid tribute to Scarlett as a normal, healthy girl with a long life ahead of her. Thousands of migrants who have been working illegally in the country have been arrested as part of the government's efforts to tighten border security. Around 4,000 arrests have been made and more than 5,000 immigration enforcement visits since Labour took power on the 5th of July. The government says that those often working illegally in nail bars, car washes and restaurants are sold false promises about living and working in the UK and are encouraged to make dangerous journeys to the country organised by criminal gangs. Later today, there'll be a second reading in the House of Commons of the government's Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill. The legislation would give new powers to police and immigration officers, including the ability to seize migrants' mobile phones to assist with investigations. US President Donald Trump is set to impose 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminium imports into the US. The president is set to make an announcement later today. Steelmakers in Asia have warned that the tariffs will impact profitability and volumes of steel. It's unclear whether President Trump will make any exemptions on tariffs. Labour Minister Dame Angela Eagle said earlier this morning that it is in the best interests of both the UK and the US that the two countries carry on with their balanced trade. Mr. Trump said he will announce reciprocal tariffs on Tuesday or Wednesday. Leaders of the Church of England will gather at the General Synod today, where a debate on the Makin report, which ultimately sparked Justin Welby's resignation as Archbishop of Canterbury, will take place. The Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, is set to lead the debates despite facing calls to resign from some bishops. The Church has been criticised in recent months over safeguarding failures following the John Smith review. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Tom and Emily.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It is 7 minutes past midday. And of course, farmers are on their way to Whitehall to protest the government's proposed imposition of inheritance tax on family farms. We can see the convoy on its way through West London as we speak. This is, of course, the third time in 4 months that the rural revolt has made its way to Parliament Square, demanding Rachel Reeves' U-turns on what they're calling the closing the mines moment for British farms. Well, today promises to be the largest such protest in Westminster of farmers and their tractors that we've yet seen. Joined now by my co-host, Emily Carver, live in Westminster. As Emily, I believe that 1 or 2 tractors have already arrived there, but we're expecting the bulk a little bit later on.
We are indeed expecting the bulk a little bit later on at about 1 o'clock. That is when we're expecting all of the tractors, thousands of tractors, to descend on this area of central London, right outside the Houses of Parliament. You can see Big Ben behind me. We've got Winston Churchill to my left. We've also got Whitehall, of course, where Downing Street is too. And farmers are here to make their voices heard. They're here to make their voices heard. Now, a number of tractors have already arrived. They're not being allowed to stop quite yet, I don't believe, so they're doing the rounds. They're going around Parliament Square and around the surrounding area, tooting their horns, making it known to the public why they're here. And they're here to save the British farm, to save the family farm, to fight back against the inheritance tax raid. Now, I'm just going to walk over here because I'm delighted to be joined by Ollie Fletcher, who is second in command at Save British Farming. And he's, well, you can hear the noise behind me. He's at Save British Farming, which is the organiser of this protest today. Ollie, if you can hear me, please talk us through what's going to happen today then.
Oh, I don't know about second in command. There's a whole team of people. But we have a whole programme of events today. Hopefully from 1 p.m. we're going to fill up Whitehall and it will probably overflow. I understand there's going to be quite a lot of tractors coming. And then we're going to set up a stage. We've got a screen, all the get-up. There's going to be a show reel playing. We've got loads of speeches from loads of really, really good people, including the NFU president and a food poverty campaigner. And Gareth Wyn-Jones as well is talking. And then we will be watching the debate on the inheritance tax live as it occurs in Parliament.
Yes, because this all coincides with that e-petition debate, which has had well over 100,000 signatures.
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to make it very clear that this is not just about the inheritance. table to understand the damage that is being done to this country's ability to support itself. The Labour Party is continuing with the Conservative reforms to agriculture. We're still having to go through the agricultural transition, and that is undermining our ability to produce food, as was cemented after the war. We have fed this nation nutritious, cheap foods since World War II, and now the government is trying to stop us doing that, and we just can't sustain the pressures any longer.
And what do you make of what the government say? You know, Rachel Reeves, she says we've got this hole in our public finances, we need to balance the books, people with large shoulders need to carry that burden, and unfortunately that's the farmers apparently.
Well, the fact of the matter is that farms are not personal possessions in that sense. They are working capital. We have businesses that provide our income, but we need the land for those businesses to work. So taxing working capital in that way is just to throw a spanner in the spokes of the economy. We can't invest, we can't employ people, we can't innovate, we can't save the environment, and we can't feed the country. I don't disagree with the principles of the tax to attack investors in land. We do have a problem with that. It inflates the land value. But what we are trying to say to the government politely is that we think that they've got this wrong and they need to look at it again. And I think what they are trying to achieve can be done and should be done, but they've just got the wrong end of the stick.
Okay, and just to finish, how many tractors are we expecting? How many farmers are we expecting, and from where in the country are they coming?
Well, they're coming from all over the place. I'm from Leicestershire. I know there's people coming down all the way from up there. I came on the train. But I don't know the exact number, but we've had hundreds of sign-ups, and hopefully we will be filling up all of Whitehall and beyond.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. We'll catch up with you a little bit later, and good luck on all of today's events. It's going to be a jam-packed agenda. So, Tom, it does look like there's a lot going on today. We could have 8,000 tractors descending on Whitehall. We could have tens of thousands of protesters here very soon. As you can see, the tractors here are doing the rounds at the moment. They've got the flags, they've got the signs, no farmers, no food, no future, 3 meals a day, that's what you need. Keep your So I'm not going to read that one because there's a swear word in there. Oh. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. And there's been a lot of Rachel thieves from accounts. Needs to change her mind. So yes, the message today is Keir Starmer, change your tune.
Well, Emily, thanks so much for bringing us that. We're going to be back with you, of course, as the build-up develops, as those thousands of tractors begin to descend on Westminster. But for now, live in the studio, delighted to be joined by the former Labour Special Advisor and columnist Paul Richards. Paul, this is a misstep from the Chancellor. Did she expect that there would have been this much backlash when this change was announced without any ceremony in the budget last year?
Well, it doesn't affect that many people, and the fact that most of those people taking a day out in London to clog everything up for everyone else aren't actually affected by the changes to inheritance tax at all. I've worked in and around Parliament for 30 years. There's a demo outside Parliament every day of the week, whether it's Stop the War or pro-Gaza or anti-Brexit have been out there every single day since the Brexit vote. This is just what happens, and I'm afraid, you know, when you think the money is going into the National Health Service, then that is a good thing to do.
Of course, there has been a big disagreement between farmers' numbers, Treasury numbers, how much they believe will actually be raised and how much won't be raised. I mean, this is a huge PR battle for the Labour Party. Yeah. Farmers are a deeply sympathetic group in society. Yeah, it's like going after nurses. Farmers are right up there with what people sort of feel are the backbone of this country.
Well, I totally agree. Farmers are the backbone of this country, which is why most of them are utterly unaffected by this policy. And the policy is designed to root out those that have bought land to dodge tax. Let's be clear, and everyone should be paying the right amount of tax because we need to all be pulling together. So nothing against the farmers, but the policy affects those people really at the top level of that.
See, this seems to be the disagreement, though. Yeah. You've heard from the National Farmers Union, you've heard from lots of family farmers who say that actually this isn't going to affect just the sort of the land barons who own vast tracts of the country. Because of the way that land values have shot up in the last 10 or 20 years, the asset price bubble, as many people see it, family farms that bought their farms for not much money and have handed it down generation and generation, their turnover's very little, they might be asset rich because of the land values that have shot up very recently, but they're not cash rich. And they'll have to change the the way their farm runs, sell half their farm, close their farm to pay this tax?
I mean, they have plenty of time to think about it, and there are mitigating factors. I would say, though, I mean, I said I was disparaging about demos outside Parliament, but actually lobbying behind the scenes, if it can be shown that the numbers are not right, and if it is shown that, in fact, there is this unintended consequence that is being described, I have to say the lobbying groups, you know, the Farmers Union and so on, are very good at lobbying, but if it can be shown that these numbers don't stack up, then, of course, you know, if the facts change, you have to change your mind. But until that point, I think it's a fair policy, because even the ones who are going to be affected aren't paying the same rate that you and I are of inheritance tax. So it's not an unfair thing in the context of trying to save the National Health Service.
Just finally, there could be a fiscal event this March. There's going to be a spending review. Could this be an opportunity for the Chancellor to perhaps save some face, do a sort of half walk back, perhaps raise the threshold at which this tax comes in? Is that a possibility, do you think?
Well, she's extremely tough, Rachel, so she's not going to bow to public pressure, but on the other hand, she's very analytical. So if she sees that the numbers don't stack up, she's going to revisit it. And if she gets if for some reason she's had bad advice from Treasury officials, then the door is open. But, you know, shouting and coming to London and clogging everything up for everyone else, the militant approach, I'm afraid, doesn't work.
OK, Paul Richards, thank you very much indeed. We're going to go live to that militant approach now. Adam Cherry, our own reporter, is on one of those tractors for us. Adam, how are things going with your march through West London?
Well, Tom, we are on track. We're about, what, Douglas, 45 minutes away, 40 minutes?
Yeah, approximately 40, 45 minutes. We've just come over the Hammersmith flyover on our way up into London.
Yeah, and as I was saying, Tom, to Andrew and Bev, what's really interesting about this is as you drive through the streets, of course it's getting more populated now, more people on the street to witness this enormous convoy. The amount of support, people are really, really engaged with this and really enjoying it. And Douglas, I'll just bring you in as well. The level of public support you're receiving for this is...
Public support is unbelievable again. As last time we came up here, everybody at the bus stops, people walking along the street, grab their mobile phones, taking videos of us, all the other truck drivers, pedestrians, van drivers, bus drivers, and our emergency services are all with us.
Now, this is your third protest of this kind that you've been involved in, is it?
It is, yes.
So, are the government listening? Are they stonewalling you a little bit? Are you concerned that actually this is not making enough progress at the moment?
We believe they are listening. Unfortunately, it's not just listening we require, it's acting. As we said earlier, Rachel from Accounts doesn't really know what she's talking about. She wanted a few million or billion for the National Health Service. This is nothing. She said it's 500 farms will be affected. It's not. It's more than 50,000 farms, probably 100,000 farms, which will be affected by the whole of the inheritance tax, plus all the other things that the government promised we've never had. No farmers, no food.
Well, there you go. No farmers, no food. That is the attitude of the guys here on the march to Whitehall. They'll be here, or they'll be with Emily at about 1 o'clock. Tom will be with you with all the latest.
Excellent stuff, Adam. We'll be with you every step of the way. Thanks for joining us. Still with us, of course, in the studio is the former Labour Special Advisor and columnist Paul Richards. Because, Paul, I want to move on to another topic now. This is another headache for the government to some extent. A health minister sacked over a WhatsApp group, and now a second MP, a young MP, just in his 20s, Oliver Ryan, being called in today for questioning by the chief whip over these pretty disgusting messages in a WhatsApp chat.
I mean, it's more than a headache, and it's more than pretty disgusting, I would say. I mean, it's pretty egregious stuff that was revealed. This was a private WhatsApp group. Somebody dobbed him in and leaked it out to the Daily Mail, and there's more to come. I mean, the Mail are holding back the story, and they're going to leak out, distribute stuff over the week. I would say that Starmer acted incredibly quickly, which shows you the level of the crime committed. You know, this took 3 hours, I think, from the call coming in from the Daily Mail to this guy being sacked and out on his ear. Not just as a minister, mind you, but also as a member of the Labour Party, and I suspect there will be a by-election now in that seat. really? As well. I don't see how Andrew Gwynn carries on. This is pretty serious stuff. So it was very quickly dealt with. I would say, though, I mean, I'm on lots of these WhatsApp groups, including with ministers. This is not normal language. That's why this was so egregious and such an outlier, because this is not the way we talk to each other. This kind of, you know, people know what the guy said. It was terrible, and but it's not normal.
The group was called Trigger Me Timbers.
Well, I didn't get... What does that mean?
Which seems to be a sort of pun off the back of Shiver Me Timbers, but also the word trigger, as if it's a deliberate sort of joking group, as if it's a group for outrageous things to be said.
But you and I know, though, never write anything down you're not happy to see on the front page of the Daily Mail, you know what I mean? And I think even if it's jokey and banter, and, you know, we all know groups do this. I mean, how do you think doctors talk about their patients behind their backs, or waiters talk about their customers, or teachers talk about the pupils and the parents? You know, the groups do this, but just don't write it down and don't let it be known to those people you're talking about.
What do you think is going to happen to this young MP, Oliver Ryan? He's just in his 20s, only elected in the last election. He worked as a staffer for Andrew Gwynn and was therefore in the WhatsApp group. It was almost in a sort of professional capacity, I suppose. He was a subordinate to Andrew Gwynn at that time. What do you suspect might happen to him?
Well, as you say, he's having what we call a meeting without coffee with the chief whip, who's the most senior disciplinarian within the parliamentary party. I imagine he'll have a few strips torn off him for this. He himself, the MP, has said he should have called it out. But if he wasn't an MP when he was in the group, so it may well be that he felt intimidated not to challenge his boss, you know, in that public forum. I don't know. He'll have to account for his own actions, and he has apologised for those. So I suspect he will be disciplined in some way, but I don't think he will be sacked in quite the same way that Andrew Gwynn was. Andrew Gwynn just had to go, I'm afraid.
Wow. Well, Paul Richards, thanks so much for joining us and talking through those two stories. I should mention we are, of course, looking at live pictures of the tractors as they are on their way to Westminster, to Parliament Square, where Emily Carver is there waiting for them. Do stay with us here on GB News, on Good Afternoon Britain. There's plenty more to come on today's show, as well as tractors. Yes, indeed, an illegal working crackdown. Thousands of migrants working illegally in nail bars, car washes, restaurants and other businesses have been arrested as part of the government's new efforts to tighten UK border security.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
A woman of 53 has believed for 18 months she was in an online relationship with Brad Pitt.
I think we're seeing pictures. So these are the pictures that she received that made her believe that she was in this relationship with Brad Pitt.
And you'll see that some of it is in hospital because the scammer was claiming that he was suffering from cancer. This was playing very much on her emotion. So this is a divorcee who lived in Mauritius. She'd received a £700,000 divorce settlement, or £650,000 divorce settlement, I should say, and £700,000 has been taken from her through this scam.
Yeah.
As she was becoming, every time she became suspicious, the money was taken for payment of charges on gifts that she never received, and then hospital fees. There was lots of emotions being played into there. Now, as somebody, I'm a rom-com writer by trade, so I write romantic fiction. And one of the books I've written has actually been about somebody who did online dating, got herself into a whole heap of trouble. Not quite. She wasn't in a relationship with Brad Pitt, but she met somebody dodgy. So because I've written that book, I've met a lot of people who've come up to me and said, "Oh, it's happened to me."
It's scary in this digital age, isn't it?
They've lost $700,000, but somebody has tried it on. Somebody my question is, would a man go 18 months in a relationship online without seeing somebody and keep it going? Or is this feeding into this neediness of a particular demographic of a woman who that's better than anything else she got going on in her life, was what was being fed to her over the internet? I just
and then maybe a little bit of her knew, but she kind of just suppressed it because she
was hoping it was Brad Pitt.
Her daughter apparently for a year was saying, this can't be true, come on, think about it. But she just fell for it. But I just wonder, it's a very sad story. She's obviously now getting a lot of hate and ridicule as well.
Because she's been on French TV and she's had a huge amount of pushback from it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 25 minutes past midday. Now, thousands of illegal workers have been arrested as part of the government's bid to tighten border security. They were found to be working illegally in places like car washes, nail bars and restaurants. Almost 4,000 arrests have now been made so far, a steep rise on the figures this time last year. Let's dissect it all now with our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, a serious push from the government.
Yeah, there's no doubt the Labour government came into office and said that they were going to invest more in the law enforcement element of enforced returns and also cracking down on the gangs on the other side of the channel. The operations to crack down on the gangs, it is likely to be some very significant time before we see any very obvious difference before they actually do what they say they want to do, is break the model, if they ever manage to dent it in any meaningful way. Enforced returns and immigration raids, where you can see sort of the tangible results of that. And they have increased since Labour came to power. You mentioned that 4,000 raids. I think just in January itself, there have been over 800 raids that have taken place, more than 600 arrests. That's 73% higher than the same period last year. So it's on the up. They've been able to do that, they say, by diverting about 1,000 members of staff from the Rwanda scheme over to immigration enforcement and to allow those raids to take place. But, Tom, the big but is a few thousand raids and a few thousand arrests, while welcome, are just a drop in the ocean when we look at the estimated 1.5 million people, at least, working in the illegal economy.
1.5 million, and that's people working in the illegal economy. Are some of those people legally in the country, or all of those people not legally in the country? How many illegal immigrants actually are there in the UK?
That's it, illegal immigrants working illegally in the economy. And of course, not every illegal immigrant or immigrant is necessarily working in an illegal job. You know, many that come across as asylum seekers, they're not allowed to work.
And they're
so
living
many
in
will
hotels
not,
and receiving a stipend from the government.
But some do, because they are finding that a percentage, they've not given us the percentage, but they are finding that some of those that they arrest in these raids are people that have claimed asylum and should not be working, but are doing that.
So when it comes to these people, these 8,000 raids, the majority of them will not be people who've come over on small boats. There'll be people who've overstayed visas, come in by more traditional routes.
Yeah, as I said, a percentage, probably a smaller percentage will be people that have come across on small boats and other asylum seekers. But the vast majority are, you're right, people that have come on tourist visas. I think we mentioned the other week when I was on this raid in Wales that lots of people are coming up through the Irish border, because if you're a European Union citizen, as many people, of course, from Romania and Bulgaria and other countries that tend traditionally to come over here and work illegally are, then you can just arrive in Ireland unchecked, and then just come up over the border, as many of them are. But there's others, of course, that are coming across on tourist visas and then just staying, overstaying and getting work here as well. Others that have come on student visas and alike, all kinds of ways in which they're scamming the system. But it's a very significant number. The government does not tell us what their belief is for the true number of people working in the illegal economy. But those who monitor the immigration issue around the country believe that it's up to at least 1.5 million now.
There's been a huge amount of speculation about this because the government's sort of pointing everyone to this in the media. They're releasing video footage that previous governments haven't released. There are plans to film many more of these raids and almost put it out as promotional material. There was one poster, one digital poster that the government put out talking about deportations that was put out in a turquoise blue colour. Of course, that's the colour of the Reform Party. Is this as much a sort of political as governance response? Is this a PR drive in the face of the rise of the Reform Party?
Undoubtedly. I mean, of course, there's a big political element to what the government is doing. It knows it's getting absolutely hammered at the moment and was towards the end of last year, with the numbers coming across the channel were going up and up and up, and everybody was saying, where's your policy on smashing the gangs? So the government's very keen to show that it is doing what it promised to do to try to clamp down on illegal migration. The small boats is going to be very difficult to actually show any tangible difference over the short to medium term. So one way they can do it is to try to promote as much as they can the uptick in illegal enforcement operations like the raids that we were on in Wales. But also, of course, later this afternoon, and this will be very significant, we are going to get for the first time images of illegal migrants and foreign national offenders being removed on a flight out of this country. That's never happened before. I'd been trying for years to get the Conservative government before to do this.
And they say they wouldn't do it.
They couldn't do it because human rights, data protection, all of the above. And yet it takes now a Labour government to finally say to hell with that. We're going to put these images out. OK, they're not showing people's faces, but they are still clearly showing these individuals. Some of them are, wearing restraints as well, because 1 in 10 of those that are leaving on these deportation flights are non-compliant and have to be restrained.
And these people being deported on these flights, they'll be murderers, they'll be rapists, they'll be some of the lowest of the low.
Yeah, we'll be able to go into the figures in a bit more detail later this afternoon, but I can tell you, yes, a very significant proportion of those are serious criminals, drug dealers, murderers, rapists and alike. And many of them are those visa overstayers and other illegal immigrants that have been caught and are being returned to their home nations. Annoyingly, and I think, this will anger many people in our audience, a tiny proportion of those on these flights are those arriving on small boats.
Well, Mark, we'll be catching up with you a little bit later in the programme. Thanks so much for now for all of that. This, of course, is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We'll be right back in Westminster as the rural revolt rolls on after the news.
Tom, thank you. I'm Katie Bowen. These are your top stories from the GB Newsroom. A brief bit of breaking news this lunchtime. Ashley Dalton, the Labour MP for West Lancashire, has been appointed as a minister in the Department of Health and Social Care after Andrew Gwynn was sacked over the weekend. The appointment comes as the Chief Whip will meet with Labour MP Oliver Ryan today after an investigation was launched by the party into comments made in a WhatsApp group. The Member of Parliament for Burnley has apologised for unacceptable and deeply disappointing comments, which he deeply regrets and would not make today. Mr Ryan confirmed he was a member of the same WhatsApp group that featured racist and sexist messages that former Health Minister Andrew Gwynn was also a part of. Farmers from across the country are arriving in Westminster this afternoon in protest against the government's family farm tax. Hundreds of farmers and their tractors are gathering on the way to Whitehall. The rally, organised by Save British Farming, comes as a petition calling to keep current inheritance tax exemptions for working farms has reached almost 150,000 signatures. That's set to be debated in the Commons this afternoon. Labour has previously insisted it will not make a U-turn on its plans to introduce a 20% inheritance tax rate on farms worth more than £1 million. They've also said that farmers are the backbone of Britain. Earlier this morning, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage spoke to Ellie and Eamon after speaking to the farmers.
They feel, and some of these families have had farms for hundreds of years, they feel directly threatened by these proposed tax changes, and they're going to stand up and they're going to fight. And they're doing it here. We're in North London this morning. But this is beginning to happen all over the country. And I sense that we've got a great feeling in our country for the countryside. It's only like it is because it's been looked after and husbanded for centuries by people like this. So I think the public are getting on their side.
50-year-old Simon Vickers, who stabbed his 14-year-old daughter Scarlett in the heart while he claimed they were play fighting in their kitchen, has been jailed at Teesside Crown Court for life with a minimum term of 15 years after he was convicted of her murder. Delivering the sentence, Mr Justice Cotter said Vickers had never given a truthful explanation of what happened, saying the tragedy must have been down to Vickers losing his temper. He paid tribute to Scarlett as a normal, healthy girl with a long life ahead of her. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, I'm here with your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Now, it's going to be pretty cloudy for many of us today and feeling cold too. Even a bit of rain, sleet and hill snow around for some of us. All of this is coming due to an easterly wind that we have coming in due to an area of high pressure over Scandinavia. It's not the strongest easterly wind, but nonetheless, it's going to add to the cold feel to things because of the cold air across us and the largely cloudy skies. Some glimmers of sunshine across western Scotland. Otherwise, it's pretty grey, pretty gloomy. And like I said, there will be some outbreaks of rain, even some sleet and hill snow over the higher ground towards eastern parts in particular. Temperatures are a little bit on the low side, and as I mentioned, that easterly wind, it's not particularly strong, but where you get it, it's going to make it feel even chillier still. As we go into this evening, still clinging on to some clear skies across western parts of Scotland, but I am expecting the cloud to build, to push in as we go overnight. Eastern parts of Scotland seeing some rain, sleet and snow over higher ground as well. A little bit of rain across some parts of Northern Ireland, but nothing particularly heavy. But down the eastern side of England, we are going to have some rain, sleet and snow pushing its way, and even across parts of the southeast. Don't be surprised if we see a little bit of snow falling as we go through this evening, but I'm not expecting much to settle. Drier towards the west, always drier here, but it is going to be pretty cloudy. Like I say, the cloud building from the east as we go overnight. And with that in mind, we are still going to have more damp weather pushing into eastern parts, but with the cloudier skies for many, yes, it is going to be chilly, but temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Low single figures for most of us, perhaps a touch of frost where we do get some clearer skies. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, it's somewhat of a repeat story. Eastern parts again seeing some rain, sleet or snow pushing through. Often cloudy for many of us, cloudier than today for western parts of Scotland. There is some rain close to the southwest, but this may not make too much progress in across the land, and temperatures still a little bit below average for the time of year.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Train services are suspended between Glasgow Central and Paisley Canal because of a signalling problem on the M74 in South Lanarkshire. The inside lane's closed southbound where a lorry's broken down. At junction 6 at Hamilton causing queues. The M1 in Derbyshire is partly blocked southbound by a breakdown between junctions 29A and 29 from Markham Vale to the Chesterfield and Mansfield turn causing delays. The M40 in Oxfordshire is partly blocked northbound by an accident just after junction 9 at Bicester, causing roughly 2 miles of queues. On the M5 in Bristol, there's a lane closed southbound. There's an accident between junctions 18 and 19 from the M49 to Portishead with queues towards and past there. In the Vale of Glamorgan, the High Street at Cowbridge is closed because of an accident causing queues. And on the M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed westbound where someone's broken down between junctions 9 and 8 near Fareham.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Farmers have descended on Whitehall to protest the government's proposed imposition on inheritance tax on family farms. It's currently 20 minutes to 1 o'clock, and it's at 1 when the great critical mass of these tractors will arrive at Parliament Square. This, of course, the third time in 4 months the rural revolt has made its way to Parliament Square, demanding Rachel Reeves' U-turns on what they're calling the closing of the mines moment for British farms. And today promises to be the biggest protest yet. Joined by Emily Carver, my wonderful co-host, live in Westminster. Emily, how's it looking?
Well, it's looking rather busy now. I've changed my position. I'm right in the middle of the road in Whitehall. You can probably see Trafalgar Square behind me, and also you can probably see the addition of many a tractor. It's chock-a-block, back-to-back tractors now. They're descending on Whitehall. As you can see, they're not moving very quickly because there are just that many of them. Here we have one slogan: abolish inheritance tax for all. So perhaps not even for just for farmers, but for everyone. Get rid of death taxes. We've also got no farmers, no food, no future. Hello. We've also got a huge number of tractors coming through. So this is where the action begins. They're coming down from Trafalgar Square, coming down Whitehall, and then they'll be parking down nearer to the Houses of Parliament. Now there's going to be speeches taking place here as well. I believe there's going to be an area cordoned off just behind me where those speeches will take place from about 3:15. But joining me right now is Clive Bailey, who is a farmer. Clive, thank you very much for talking to us. You're from Staffordshire.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
You're a farmer. Tell me why you're here.
Well, inheritance tax is obviously the main reason, the main focus of this that's been going on, since the budget. But it isn't just that, actually. It's this overall attack from the government on farming and the British countryside. But, yeah, we've got kind of other taxes, carbon tax on fertiliser, taxes on, even down to taxes on double cab pickups that we need to use for work. We're being hit from all angles, and it's just becoming it's an impossible tax to pay. It really will be the end. Well, from my own personal point of view, my son Henry, he's going to take away the option for him to be the next generation of farmers. I'm the third generation, and sadly will probably be the last if this tax stays.
And how old is your son Henry?
Henry's 12. He's 12 now, yeah.
Okay, and he does, at the moment, his ambition is to continue on with the farming, keep it going.
Yes, yeah. I think he has grown up on a farm like I did. I grew up on my farm, kind of helping my dad. It's a fantastic childhood, obviously, very privileged from that point of view. But it's not particularly a privileged one financially, which a lot of people think it is. The wealth that's tied up in farmland and what they aim to tax with the inheritance tax, that's our working capital. That's the cost of doing business. It's the returns on that. I mean, farmers, we're not special, no more special than any other member of society. And we pay our taxes, we pay our income tax, we pay VAT, we pay national insurance contributions on our employees if we employ staff on the farm. But the tax... But to tax our asset, it's a bit like asking a plumber to sell his tools to pay his tax. He's not...
Sorry, there's so much noise here, but we're trying to absorb the atmosphere as best as we can. But how does it make you feel seeing all these tractors descend, seeing the number of people who are going to be here today to listen to what you and the rest of the farming industry have to say?
It's fantastic. I mean, I think we've had fantastic public support, and that's what it's all about. I mean, the first kind of time we came to Westminster was back in November the 19th. It was peaceful. The Met Police said on that day that we left Whitehall tidier than we found it. People saying at the time, will it get more French? Will there be roads blocked? Will there be that kind of trouble? And I think we've proved as farmers that that's not what we're about. We appreciate the public support. We understand that it's not just farmers that are upset and annoyed with this government and the way that they're not listening. There's been very little dialogue about this, which is clearly a big issue. They said this affected 500 farmers. Well, there was 50,000 or so turned up on the 19th of November. There have been, I think this is a third visit to London, to Whitehall. There's been protests going on most weeks, well, every week, several times a week in York and Melton Mowbray and all around the country. So it's not going away, and we're not doing enough, are we?
Yeah, there's clearly a lot of perseverance, isn't there? Because as you say, the dialogue hasn't been there up till now. Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer saying, no, we're sticking with this one. But let's just stay there for me, and we're just going to scan around and have a little look at what's coming here. We all need a farmer 3X days scrap, IHT for all, that's inheritance tax. As we can see, some normal traffic as well, but tractors are piling up. They're coming through the side roads as well. We've got one tractor there with the words simply Labour liars. Labour are saying that they're supporting the farmers, that they're giving money to the farming community, that they're going to be helping in various ways. But this is the sticking point, this inheritance tax and some of the other changes that are impacting farmers too. We've got tractors there we go, Labour liars. We've got behind that fair price for farmers and consumers, more tractors coming in from all directions. This is getting very busy indeed. There could be thousands of tractors arriving today throughout the afternoon, and they'll be here while there are speeches. And of course, at 4:30 in the afternoon, there will be a debate in Parliament on that e-petition that's got well over 100,000 signatures to scrap this inheritance tax rate, to try and get Rachel Reeves to U-turn. Clive, just lastly, what would your message be, just very clearly, to Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves?
Look, I think we appreciate what you tried to achieve in the budget, and some of the points are valid. You know, there was this problem with kind of people using, you know, not farmers, not genuine family farms, but what you've done with the, you know, kind of by not really thinking it through, by not consulting with the people that understand this, the agricultural economists and the farmers themselves, you've created a set of rules that are going to catch out the genuine family farmer and end that multi-generational farming. We'll lose our food security, we'll lose the countryside, and all the associated industries that go with that. It's you know, it's a huge hit on the economy, and you want growth. Well, you know, get behind us, and you know, farmers know about growing things, right? So we can probably teach you a few things about growing an economy. So yeah,
that's brilliant. Farmers know something about growing things, so they can teach the government something about growth. That's a great one. Clive Bailey, thank you very much indeed. Farmer from Staffordshire. Just scan around to have a look at this horde of tractors descending. They are non-stop coming down here. As you can say, it's quite chaotic, but we'll be bringing you live coverage throughout the afternoon. Back to you, Tom.
Fantastic stuff, Emily. Looking forward to this all officially kicking off in just less than 15 minutes' time now. Huge number of tractors. Goodness me, do stay with us here on GB News. But if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of those top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The weather in the Mediterranean this week is looking a bit mixed. We do have some showers lingering, particularly around the Adriatic at the moment, parts of Italy and France as well. Thunderstorms recently across Malta and Sicily should be clearing off a little bit. Generally, there's some brighter skies for parts of southern Spain, though we do have this rain band pushing into areas of Portugal as well. Once that system does clear, though, it's generally expected to turn a touch brighter for western areas, though still rather changeable further towards the east.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Do stay with us. Much more coming up on the show. Indeed, the Church of England's General Synod is gathering for the first time since the Archbishop of Canterbury's resignation at what's been described as a time of unprecedented crisis for the Church. That and plenty more farmers too.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I'm really pleased to see this story. It's the news that bowel cancer screening, the age for that is going to be dropped from 60 to 50. And this is really, really important because bowel cancer is one of the biggest killers, and more people appear to be getting diagnosed with bowel cancer in their 50s. Not entirely clear why. And there was an inspirational woman called Deborah James who I actually met when I used to be the Shadow Health Secretary, and I remember meeting her when she had her cancer diagnosis and supporting her campaign, and she sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but it was a phenomenal campaign, and I think did inspire the nation. And this is so important. So people in their 50s are going to be sent these kits in the post. And I suppose my plea is just do not ignore these kits because you can deal with cancer if you catch it early enough.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is not the most pleasant thing to do, and a lot of us aren't used to it and talking about it and whatever, but it's essential, obviously, to do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And The other reason I wanted to sort of flag this is, I mean, we can sometimes make ourselves sort of pretty miserable looking at the newspapers, but this is undoubtedly a good initiative that the government have done this, and that campaigners have persuaded the government to do this. So, look, I just want to plead to everybody watching, if you get one of these kits, use it.
And, of course, I think it's really important within that to point out that this would not have helped Deborah, because Deborah was 40 when she died. And what's really important when you see stories like this is to pay attention to what your body is telling you. And if you have symptoms that are weird, it is important to go to your doctor and to talk about them and to take the tests.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 10 to 1, and the Church of England's General Synod is gathering for the first time since the Archbishop of Canterbury's resignation. It's been described as a time of unprecedented crisis for the Church. A debate is taking place on the Make-In report, which sparked Justin Welby's resignation last year. And joining us from central London to discuss this is our very own national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, what's going on today?
Good afternoon, Tom. Well, as you said, there will be that debate over the Make-In report, which found that hundreds of victims had been failed by the Church of England by an abuser called John Smith, a barrister, an evangelical who was involved in heinous abuse of mostly boys over several decades and escaped to South Africa to avoid scrutiny. But we're going to hear from the Archbishop of York opening the General Synod, essentially the Church's Parliament, at around 2 p.m. today. Now, we're expecting to hear, as you've said, reflections on the fact that this is a church in a state of crisis, that public faith is low when it comes to the Church of England. And there is also going to be a leading debate tomorrow on safeguarding, and that's going to be at the forefront of the minds of those attending the Synod because of that report, but also ongoing and more recent allegations of sexual abuse and harassment. And there are two main proposed changes to the current safeguarding practices in the Church of England. The first proposal is to remove all safeguarding practices from oversight within the Church of England, to create a new national body entirely external and independent of the bishops and the diocese. But a second proposal is also going to be voted on, which would see only a central body reallocated, but local level, at the diocese level, at the bishop's level, people still retaining oversight of their processes at that stage. There are significant calls and open letters supporting both measures. We've heard from hundreds of people supporting both the national independent oversight and also the more local independent oversight. And it comes after Alexis Jay, the social worker and academic who chaired the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, explicitly recommended putting safeguarding to an external body. So that's going to be the main debate tomorrow, but it's the afternoon today when we're going to hear from Justin Welby's temporary stand-in, the Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell. He has faced his own calls to quit over alleged failures to deal with allegations of abuse, over some allegations relating to the Bishop of Liverpool, who resigned last month. Those are allegations that both men deny. So very much, Tom, a church in crisis as it attempts to reform itself and restore some faith with the public.
And no doubt a bit of politicking going on in this synod over the selection of the next Archbishop. But Charlie Peters, thanks so much for joining us there. Catch up with you in a little bit. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and do not move a muscle. It's fast approaching 1 o'clock, the official start time for the largest farmer protest in Westminster. This rural revolt is rolling in to Parliament Square. Perhaps thousands of tractors. Stay with us after the weather.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm here with your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Now, it's going to be pretty cloudy for many of us today and feeling cold too. Even a bit of rain, sleet and hill snow around for some of us. All of this is coming due to an easterly wind that we have coming in due to an area of high pressure over Scandinavia. It's not the strongest easterly wind, but nonetheless it's going to add to the cold feel to things because of the cold air across us and the largely cloudy skies. Some glimmers of sunshine across western Scotland, otherwise it's pretty grey, pretty gloomy. And like I said, there will be some outbreaks of rain, even some sleet and hill snow over the higher ground towards eastern parts in particular. Temperatures are a little bit on the low side, and as I mentioned, that easterly wind, it's not particularly strong, but where you get it, it's going to make it feel even chillier still. As we go into this evening, still clinging on to some clear skies across western parts of Scotland, but I am expecting the cloud to build, to push in as we go overnight. Eastern parts of Scotland seeing some rain, sleet and snow over higher ground as well. A little bit of rain across some parts of Northern Ireland, but nothing particularly heavy. But down the eastern side of England, we are going to have some rain, sleet and snow pushing its way, and even across parts of the southeast. Don't be surprised if we see a little bit of snow falling as we go through this evening, but I'm not expecting much to settle. Drier towards the west, always drier here, but it is going to be pretty cloudy. Like I say, the cloud building from the east as we go overnight, and with that in mind, we are still going to have more damp weather pushing into eastern parts, but with the cloudier skies for many, yes, it is going to be chilly, but temperatures not dropping a huge amount, low single figures for most of us, perhaps a touch of frost where we do get some clearer skies. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, it's somewhat of a repeat story. Eastern parts again seeing some rain, sleet pushing through. Often cloudy for many of us, cloudier than today for western parts of Scotland. There is some rain close to the southwest, but this may not make too much progress in across the land, and temperatures still a little bit below average for the time of year.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're doubling your chances to win in our latest Great British giveaway, with 2 fabulous prize bundles up for grabs. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. And the best news is, 2 lucky winners are going to win. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Feathers McGraw, Wallace and Gromit's their villain, has become an unlikely hit at UK tattoo parlours. He's menacing.
He is, yeah.
And he's,
and in fact, he doesn't speak, and he's got this glove on top of his head trying to convince us he's a chicken or something.
And that is a real tattoo that someone has decided to to have there. What do you two think about tattoos? Are they express themselves? Or?
I love it. So I've basically got Dr. King.
There we go.
Me.
Oh, there he goes.
Nice.
He's showing us.
If you can't fly, run.
Nice.
Probably slightly more meaningful than having the villainous penguin.
Oh, come on, Trey, you won't get Feathers McGraw.
Maybe not. It's kind of got that kind. You know when you go abroad and you're Ibiza or Magaluf and you Tenerife and you get a quick tattoo. It's looking like that, yeah. Or like a pirate or something. It's kind of got that vibe. Not for me. However, I do get the sentimentality around it. You know, some people have grown up on Wallace and Gromit and they love it and it has meaning. And he is a well-written character, so I get it.
Brilliant, isn't it?
I prefer my tattoos a bit more meaningful.
Yeah, I feel like as well, there's a surge in it. Lots of people have had it, but then is it then going to become unpopular because of it? And how many people regret the tattoos? Apparently, not just 14% of people regret tattoos.
Wow.
See, I think that's where the meaningful side comes into it. I've got a couple of meaningful tattoos, and I know I will never get bored of them. Not one on my wrist, one on my ankle. They're not hidden, but I think because they mean something to me, I'll never get bored.
Yes, exactly. I think that's important. If you're gonna, a tattoo's for life, isn't it?
That's the thing.
It's got to mean something.
Have you not?
I'll be indecisive. I think I'll get something.
I want to keep on my body forever.
If I had about 6 or 7 pints and then stumbled into a tattoo parlour,
you'd come out with
something chaotic. A disaster could happen. Then I walk out. Oh no, I've got this for the rest of my life.
You might become addicted.
Well, let's hope not.
Some people do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Monday, the 10th of February. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver, and I'm here in the heart of central London, in Trafalgar Square, as hordes of tractors line up to get through to Whitehall to protest Labour's tax raid on family farms.
And it's looking magnificent. We'll be with Emily throughout the programme. Of course, elsewhere, illegal working crackdown. Thousands of migrants working illegally in nail bars, car washes, restaurants and other businesses have been arrested as part of the UK government's efforts to tighten border security. Mark White, of course, will be with us. Elsewhere, Labour's WhatsApp row. The chief whip will meet with Oliver Ryan, the Labour MP, today after an investigation was launched into the WhatsApp group row. This with extraordinarily distasteful comments. And of course, Emily, you're live where the action is. You're there in Parliament Square. What's going on?
Yes, I'm here actually at Trafalgar Square at the moment. This is where the tractors are funneling in from as they join a massive queue. I hope you can see a massive queue down Whitehall. You can see all of the lights flashing brightly, all of the horns tooting their horns very loudly. Lots of songs. Here they go, here they go. And they're going to add to the potentially thousands of tractors are going to be queuing up here, and they're going to be making their voices heard. They have one message for Sir Keir Starmer, and that is to change his tune and U-turn on the inheritance tax raid. We'll be here live all afternoon, so stick with us.
Fantastic stuff, my goodness me, all building up there. Of course, your comments are very welcome. gbnews.com/your say to get involved in all of the action. What do you make of the protests? Keen to hear that. All to come, of course, after your latest news headlines.
Tom, Emily, thank you and good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 1. These are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. Farmers from across the country are arriving in Westminster this afternoon in protest against the government's family farm tax. Hundreds of farmers and their tractors are gathering on the way to Whitehall. The rally, organised by Save British Farming, comes as a petition calling to keep current inheritance tax exemptions for working farms has reached almost 150,000 signatures. That's set to be debated in the Commons this afternoon. Labour has previously insisted it will not make a U-turn on its plans to introduce a 20% inheritance tax rate on farms worth more than £1 million. They've also said that farmers are the backbone of Britain. Earlier this morning, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage spoke to Ellie and Eamon after speaking to farmers.
They feel, and some of these families have had farms for hundreds of years, they feel directly threatened by these proposed tax changes, and they're going to stand up and they're going to fight. And they're doing it here. We're in North London this morning. But this is beginning to happen all over the country, and I sense that we've got a great feeling in our country for the countryside. It's only like it is because it's been looked after and husbanded for centuries by people like this. So I think the public are getting on their side.
Elsewhere, Ashley Dalton, the Labour MP for West Lancashire, has been appointed as a minister in the Department of Health and Social Care after Andrew Gwynn was sacked over the weekend. The appointment comes as the Chief Whip will meet with Labour MP Oliver Ryan today after an investigation was launched by the party into comments made in a WhatsApp group. The Member of Parliament for Burnley has apologised for unacceptable and deeply disappointing comments which he deeply regrets and would not make today. Mr Ryan confirmed he was a member of the same WhatsApp group that featured racist and sexist messages that former Health Minister Andrew Gwynn was also a part of. 50-year-old Simon Vickers, who stabbed his 14-year-old daughter Scarlett in the heart while he claimed they were play fighting in their kitchen, has been jailed at Teesside Crown Court for life with a minimum term of 15 years after he was convicted of murder. Delivering the sentence, Mr Justice Cotter said Vickers had never given a truthful explanation of what happened, saying the tragedy must have been down to Vickers losing his temper. He paid tribute to Scarlett as a normal, healthy girl with a long life ahead of her. At the start of National Apprenticeships Week, the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, has announced she is cutting red tape to provide more apprenticeships to support businesses. The plans announced today will deliver 10,000 more apprenticeships each year. The Education Secretary shared her plans earlier on.
What we're announcing will deliver 10,000 more apprenticeships every year, and that will be through ensuring that apprentices get their English and maths training on the job, so related to the area in which they're training, but also shorter course apprenticeships too, because not everyone requires that full 12 months. So we've listened to business, they've called for many of these changes, and we want to work with them to deliver the apprenticeship starts that we know right across the country, parents in particular, are desperate to see.
Thousands of migrants who have been working illegally in the country have been arrested as part of the government's efforts to tighten border security. Around 4,000 arrests have been made in more than 5,000 immigration enforcement visits since Labour took power on the 5th of July. The government says that those often working illegally in nail bars, car washes and restaurants are sold false promises about living and working in the UK and are encouraged to make dangerous journeys to the country organised by criminal gangs. Later today, there'll be a second reading in the House of Commons of the government's Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill. The legislation would give new powers to police and immigration officers, including the ability to seize migrants' mobile phones to assist with investigations. The families of two girls killed in the Southport stabbings have given an interview today where they paid tribute to their daughters and called for a public inquiry. In an interview with ITV, the parents of Elsie Stancombe and BB King spoke about their memories of the girls who, along with Alice de Silva Aguiar, were murdered by Axel Rudder-Cabana in July last year. The families also spoke of their hope that other children can now be protected. And US President Donald Trump is set to impose 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminium imports into the US. The president is set to make an announcement later today. Steelmakers in Asia have warned that the tariffs will impact profitability and volumes of steel. It's unclear whether President Trump will make any exemptions on tariffs. Labour Minister Dame Angela Eagles said earlier this morning that it is in the best interests of both the UK and the US that the two countries carry on with their balanced trade. Mr Trump said he will announce reciprocal tariffs on Tuesday or Wednesday. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain, and at 7 minutes past 1, farmers are descending on Whitehall to protest the government's proposed imposition of inheritance tax on family farms. This, of course, the third time in 4 months the rural revolt has made its way to Parliament Square, demanding the Chancellor U-turns on what they call the closing of the mines moment for British farms. Today promises to be the biggest protest yet. There on the ground is my co-host Emily Carver, live in Westminster. Emily, what's happening?
Thanks, Tom. Yes, I am here live in Westminster. I'm at Trafalgar Square, where, as you can see, the tractors are very much descending on Whitehall to make their voices known. We've got tractors coming from every angle, from behind Trafalgar Square, from through the Strand and down Whitehall. You can see all the lights flashing as they descend. Now, 1 o'clock is kick-off time. It is very much kicked off. At 3:50, we're going to have lots of speeches from people who were well known, including Gareth Wyn-Jones, the celebrity farmer, and also from the NFU, of course, too. I'm going to be here all day, but with me now is Sam Riley, who is an agricultural lecturer in Nottinghamshire. I hope you can hear me. But you have a really interesting experience because you work and teach 16 to 18-year-olds. A lot of them are looking to stay in agriculture, pick up their family farm, lead it into the future, and this is the #1 issue they're talking about.
This is at the moment, yes. So we've essentially seen college-level agriculture. So the students themselves, half of them are from agricultural backgrounds with family farms, half of them aren't. They're really interested in getting into the sector. And the big concern for them is when this came up is their parents are saying to them, oh, you can't, the sector isn't viable anymore. We're really disappointed to see all this happen. And it's causing a lot of stress at a really turbulent time of their lives. So really, as a teacher, I'm really concerned for them in the future, as well as how the overall industry is going with these people trying to come in, all the excitement from Clarkson's farm and all these new faces are really keen to see the industry. And this is another barrier letting them come into it, essentially.
I mean, I must admit, I've noticed that a lot of the people driving the tractors down here to central London are very young. A lot of young men and women in their, I'd say, early 20s.
They're the most passionate bunch out of it. The UK's got a fantastic young farmers community. So essentially them coming down and showing their support for a bill there, this tax will eventually affect them hugely, more than anybody else. So for them to come down and show their support is fantastic. Really good to see.
And what are you looking forward to today then?
I'm looking forward to seeing my friend Ollie Fletcher presenting for Save British Farming. Should be a fantastic speech from all the parties involved. I'm looking forward to connecting with some people and really seeing some nice community spirit from the farmers.
And I'm struck by just how many people have turned up already. If we just have a look at the massive queue of tractors, not everyone is going to be able to fit. There are that many, and so many people here who are just here to support the cause as well. People who care passionately about the farming industry, and also people who just see this as an injustice. They see this as something that Rachel Reeves needs to U-turn on to gain credibility. What would your message be to the Labour government?
I think you need to listen to the voice of young people in particular, and I think it's the idea that they will be your future voter base. No matter where they are, rural, urban, you need to listen to those young people because they will be reflecting in their vote where it goes next election. So I think it's really important.
Yeah, and what are you saying to some of your younger students in that 16 to 18-year-old bracket when they come to you or they have discussions in class about how they're worried about the future? What do you say to them?
I mean, it's one of those topics we actively debate in class in terms of they are so concerned. Whenever we ask them, to bring up a topic of their interest to bring in class, they always mention inheritance tax. It is the one they push for the most. And I think to them, we don't have many answers to them because it's such an ongoing, volatile topic.
Yeah, and do you think, are you positive about the action that's being taken today, that you think it could actually change some minds in government, that, the perseverance is worth it?
I think it's totally worth it. I think we've got some fantastic voices speaking today, and I think overall the message being shown with this support is absolutely fantastic. So I think let's move the message forward and see how we do.
I mean, it's hard to ignore. I mean, just the hullabaloo, the noise that these tractors make, and also the positivity, actually. You see the farmers, they're all smiling, they're, playing their songs and they're honking tunes and chanting and everything. They're all here coming from all corners of the country, and it feels as though they're remaining positive, but they know that something needs to change if family farms are going to continue into the future. Now, next time I chat to you, Tom, we are going to be down at the hub nearer to Parliament Square, where we're going to try and track down that tank that we saw earlier, Tom.
In a picture of this tank online, I'm very much looking forward to seeing if you can climb on top of it and work out if it is actually a tank or just an armoured military vehicle. Well, we'll catch up with you, of course, in a little bit, Emily. See you in a second. Joining me now is the Professor of Economics and Public Policy at King's College London, Jonathan Porters. Jonathan, the economics behind this seems to me to be not particularly clear. On the one hand, you have the National Farmers Union saying this will affect many, many family farms, and the government, the Treasury, saying it will only affect the very richest. I mean, there's a disagreement here over the numbers.
Yes, I think the Treasury is broadly right, although they probably are minimising it a bit. The vast majority of the tax burden, the extra tax burden this will impose, will go on very large farms and very rich people. I think the first thing we have to say is what this is doing is reducing, not eliminating, but reducing a big tax break. In other words, farmers are not paying inheritance tax the way the rest of us are, the way other people who inherit from their parents are, for example. And this doesn't eliminate that tax break, it reduces it. And it will particularly affect relatively large farms and relatively rich people. You mentioned Clarkson before, and how Clarkson got. Well, Jeremy Clarkson, of course, famously got into farming precisely because of this inheritance tax break. It's a way
he of course disputes that and says that that was a joke. But Jonathan,
yes, I think we all know how seriously to take that.
But Jonathan, I do want to ask you, though, because this is a really crucial point. Over the last 15 years, we've seen an asset price bubble in this country. We've seen asset prices rise and rise and rise, and people who, purchased bits of land or properties for actually not that much money, several decades ago, now find themselves incredibly asset rich, but perhaps deeply cash poor. There are going to be many farmers who, on paper, are worth quite a bit of money in this country, but who don't feel like they're worth anything close to that money, and they're only worth that money if they sell up their farm.
Well, yes, but they don't have to sell up their farm, of course. It's a question of what happens to that very valuable asset when the time comes to pass it to the next generation, and whether some of that value should, as it does with other assets, go back to the exchequer. Just as, for example, my mother is sitting on a very, very valuable asset that is worth far, far more than she paid for it. Is it right that I shouldn't have to sell that when she dies, but that I should be able to get that benefit? She's not forced to sell it, but when she dies, of course, I will be forced to sell it, and I will have to pay considerably more in percentage terms than a farmer would to the exchequer. And that, frankly, is absolutely right. I didn't earn that money. She didn't really earn that money. I'll have to give some of it back to the Treasury to fund our public services. That seems actually pretty reasonable to me.
I suppose, Jonathan, and I'm just guessing here, but you already have a house. When it comes to the point of inheritance tax and your potential inheritance of your mother's house, that's not about your ability to continue having a house or not. Whereas for a farmer, for a family farmer, this is about the next generation continuing being able to farm. I suppose, is there an issue here that we're perhaps looking at this in all too economic a fashion? Because we do subsidise farms in this country. We do see a social value to family farms for their stewardship of the land, for their looking after of the environment. We do subsidise that in all sorts of ways. And of course, farmers could sell their land. They could exit farming and perhaps make a lot more money if they cashed in with their asset price. But they choose not to. They choose to continue farming, which will probably earn them quite a bit less money than if they went into property development or anything else. They choose to be farmers, perhaps out of a sense of public duty and history and family. Are we forgetting that here?
Well, we do subsidise farmers. You're quite right. We do subsidise them for small farms, for in terms of price support and for the environmental services that they deliver to all of us. And I think that is quite reasonable. But if we're going to do that, then an inheritance tax break is a particularly bad way of doing it, because overwhelmingly the value of that inheritance tax break goes, first of all, to large, rich farms and to people like Clarkson and James Dyson, who use it explicitly as a tax break. And secondly, it inflates the value of the land, which actually makes it, of course, more difficult in some ways for family farmers to continue. So if we wanted to actually keep small family farms in business and to have an explicit subsidy, then we should do that. Giving an inheritance tax break is a particularly inefficient and regressive way of doing it.
Or perhaps one might argue that the threshold could be at a slightly different level if you want to catch the Dysons, but not many of the family farmers that we'll be speaking to today. But Jonathan Porters, really appreciate your time as always. Thank you for giving us the economic analysis there that is so important in this conversation. We're going to cross live now to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who has been speaking with the Prime Minister's official spokesperson a little bit earlier today. Christopher, what can you tell us?
Yes, hi Tom. Yeah, welcome to a freezing cold Westminster. Behind me, I've walked past tractors. There's a couple of tanks there, all holding Whitehall lockdown as farmers protest about the inheritance tax change coming in April next year. Number 10 tells us at the briefing with the spokesman that the PM has engaged previously with the NFU and farmers. They won't say if the PM is meeting with the farmers at his gate right now. Their commitment, they say, to farming is steadfast. £5 billion committed at the budget and to flood defences, and they say that the government view is still that 3/4 of farms won't be affected by the IHT changes you're discussing there, I think, with Jonathan Portes. Elsewhere, we've heard about the changing government. Andrew Gwynn, of course, left the government after those remarks on WhatsApp were revealed. The replacement, Ashley Dalton, the PM spokesman, won't comment on the remarks about llamas and gender identity made by Ashley Dalton when he was an MP. They're made by an MP, not when he's a minister.
Sorry, Christopher, can I just jump in there? Just to explain what this llama comment was, because in 2016 on Twitter, Ashley Dalton, who is now the new health minister, was asked if a person decided they were a llama, should other people take them seriously? And she responded yes. She responded yes, and treat you with dignity and respect. Do we now have a health minister who thinks people can identify as a llama?
Number 10, were they here answering that question, Tom, would say it's up to Ashley Dalton to justify what she said as an MP, and the spokesman told us that those remarks were made before she entered government as a minister, so we'll wait and see. I'm sure that she'll be asked about llamas and gender identity. The issue of gender ID did come up. The reports at the weekend that the government, or today's Times, forgive me, was going slow on the idea of making it easier to say what gender you are. The government says not going to comment on issue of priorities, but it's not in this the King's speech for this term of government, but it was in the party's manifesto at the last election. On MPs' pay, Tom, I know you're very keen on that one. Of course, you know, IPSA, the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, has recommended a 2.8% pay rise for MPs in April. Inflation is 2.5%, so it is inflation busting in journalistic terms. The PM spokesman wouldn't say whether the PM would accept that. They said simply that in the past, PMs have followed IPSA's recommendations, and the suggestion is that won't be changed. But some might say, should MPs be paid £94,000 a year to be an MP? That's a debate I'm sure we had on GB News later on today. And just finally, there are no plans to just meet with Caribbean leaders coming here to discuss slavery reparations. Many trillions of pounds are asked for by this group, but the PM's position has not changed. Our position, they say, is we don't pay slavery reparations, and that has not changed, and that will not change, Tom.
OK, well, Christopher Hope on that news. No slavery reparations, but perhaps an MP pay rise of £2,538 per MP. Perhaps not the best look on the day that farmers are asking to not have their own money taken from them. Christopher Hope, thanks very much for joining us live there from Westminster. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more on today's show, of course. More on those farmer protests as they ramp up, but also Labour's WhatsApp row. The Chief Whip will meet with the Labour MP Oliver Ryan today. An investigation, of course, has been launched by the party into comments made in a WhatsApp group.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And then fashionistas are keen to see which new trends are set to hit the catwalk.
Well, our next guest is very well placed to share her predictions with us after being a contestant on hit ITV series Dress the Nation, as well as being an upcycling and sewing consultant.
Wow. Joining us now is Tendai Murewe. I want to go back to you appearing on the ITV Dress the Nation.
Right.
Tell us about that experience. What was that like?
Oh, that was one of my highlights as a upcycling consultant. I learned to sew in my kitchen 5 years ago. And then, you know, during COVID, just making masks. Then the next thing I was on a Dress the Nation, making dresses in front of TV. Yeah, it was just incredible. I think we all had all these clothes that we have, but we don't know what to do with them. So mainly I started with men's jackets, taking off the sleeves and putting it like a print on.
I've tried this. I've tried taking off my sleeves before. I now have about 3 jackets with no sleeves. I never managed to put them back on.
You need to come to a workshop.
You
need to come to a workshop.
I need an upcycling consultant. 2025, what can we expect fashion-wise?
I think bold prints are back. People are loving. I think you walk on the streets in frollos and oversized men's jackets.
So the exact opposite. We have drastically underperformed this morning. You're just saying not like us.
We just woke up this morning and thought it's winter, it's cold, it's grey.
Grey, miserable.
Is that not the way to go?
No, it is. I think because fashion is expressive. It's whatever you want to express yourself. You know?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 25 minutes past 1, and all day today on GB News, we're following what promises to be the largest farmer protest yet, descending on Westminster. We're expecting thousands of tractors, which, of course, have already been arriving in Parliament. My co-host Emily Carver is there throughout the programme today, and indeed on later into the afternoon too. Delighted to be joined by Emily now. Emily, what's the scene on the ground?
Well, there's a lot of anticipation here. We're going to have speeches from about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There's also a debate going on in Parliament from 4:30 on an e-petition against this inheritance tax decision. Labour government. Behind me and around me, surrounding me, are huge numbers of tractors. Hundreds, if not thousands, will be descending here and are descending very much now, still all trying to squeeze into this area to make their voices heard. I'm delighted to be joined by Conservative James Cleverly with me. James, why are you here?
I've got a rural constituency and I've spoken to my farmers about the potential impact of this incredibly poorly thought through policy. But even if I didn't have a rural constituency, we all eat food, and this is the food production industry. If we undermine this sector, everybody suffers. And this is an incredibly poorly thought through, rushed, botched, ill-conceived policy which will damage our food security, damage our rural economy, put a whole load of businesses out of business. And the best thing that the Labour government could do is drop it completely right now.
Now, we know why the Labour government say that they're doing this. They say it's to raise money and that those with large shoulders should bear the burden. What do you say to that?
These people don't have broad shoulders. These businesses operate right on the verge of profitability. Many of them operate at an operating loss. They don't have cash in the bank. They don't have money to sit there to pay this tax. The idea that these people are wealthy and have broad shoulders and can easily afford this is completely wrong. And anyone that has looked at the economy, looked at the numbers behind rural businesses will recognise that these people are right on the edge of profitability if they make a profit at all, and going after them with this stupid tax is going to put a lot of them out of business.
Like yourself, I've been speaking to large numbers of farmers here today and in the last few months as well. And it's not just about the inheritance tax, is it? There's a lot of concern about cheap imports, a lot of people concerned about substandard imports undercutting, also supermarkets not necessarily paying enough for the produce that's grown in this country. Now, that is something that also was very much the case during the Conservatives' leadership as well. What do you say to those concerns? Well,
we have got a pragmatic reason to support farmers, and we absolutely have done. In the conversation I've had with farmers, they said they don't mind competing with imported products as long as those products are of similar standards and that it's a level playing field. But in the conversations that I've had, they're also saying this really is the straw that's breaking the camel's back. That there are a load of challenges with regard to farming as a sector, and this is adding pressure on top of pressure on top of pressure. And those businesses, those farming businesses that have diversified, are being punished for diversifying. And this, I think, is a real wake-up call.
And is Kemi Baden not going to go on this? You know, in the House of Commons, is she going to hold the government to account on this one?
I have absolutely no doubt. Kemi is my constituency neighbour next door. She has a rural community just like I do. I know that she is absolutely passionate about this, and she will hound the government until they do the right thing and drop this stupid tax. OK, well, James Cleverly, thank you very much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. That was James Cleverly, the Conservative there, talking about the impact of the inheritance tax on farmers. Will Kemi Badenoch be the one to try and push the government to U-turn on this? That's a big question, of course, whether it will feature in Prime Minister's Questions Time this week, whether they'll take the fight to the Labour government on this very important policy. We know that the Reform Party very much have done. Nigel Farage has been one of the most outspoken people on this issue. Are the Conservatives going to push it as much as the Reform Party has done?
Really, really big questions there, and a big day in Westminster, of course. This could be all coming to a crunch potentially next month if there is this spending review, if there is a fiscal event sooner than Rachel Reeves intended. This could be something that is at least changed in some way, perhaps not scrapped in its entirety, but thresholds moved. I mean, there is a significant amount of pressure here that we're seeing in Westminster today. Emily, thanks so much for being there with us. Of course, catching up with you in just a little bit. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News today, and of course throughout the programme we want to hear what you have to say. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get involved in the programme. How many tractors do you reckon are going to hit up Westminster today? We're hearing reports of anywhere from 1,000 to, I think one suggestion was potentially 8,000. I'm not sure we're going to get to see that number, but we know that Emily's on the ground there, not just counting the tractors, but also seeking out the armoured vehicle. Perhaps it's a tank that is heading to Westminster now. This all really does hinge on a decision made by the Chancellor back in the budget last year. This decision, of course, to impose family farm tax taxes, inheritance tax, to get rid of the agricultural rate relief for the first time, really, for these farms. And this matters because the way in which agricultural property has soared in value unexpectedly, really, over the course of the last 15 years in particular. We've seen an asset bubble, the likes of which the country has rarely felt before. The value of farms that were purchased by families for not all that much money, especially if it's several generations ago. The value of land used to be a lot less, of course. But while the income of these farms has stayed roughly similar, even gone down in many cases, the value of the land the farms sit upon have, of course, risen. This creates this classic problem. Many farmers, many family farmers, surprisingly, asset rich, cash poor. But they can't realise the value of that asset unless they sell it, unless they stop being farmers. For as long as they continue to be farmers, as long as they continue to not sell that asset, not develop it, and not sell it off to someone else, well, they're not going to be realising the millions that the government thinks they have on paper. That's the crucial distinction here. The Treasury, looking at a spreadsheet, thinks these farmers are rich, but in the real world, they're not. Let's cross now to Adam Cherry, our intrepid reporter, who's riding on one of those tractors. He's hopped off his tractor now. Adam, where are you?
Tom, I'm on Whitehall. Your tractor correspondent has made it to Whitehall. Look, here we are. All the way along to Downing Street and beyond to Parliament Square down there. Now, I want to thank Douglas Turner for escorting me effortlessly to this location. It took us about 2 hours, did it more or less on time, but there was a little bit of congestion towards Trafalgar Square. We're here now, lots of people here. As I said earlier, about 120 tractors were part of the convoy that I was involved with. Everyone along the journey was really enthusiastic about it, of course. I mean, it's quite an amazing sight, isn't it? Seeing 120 tractors with horns and lights and signs. You know, really interesting to see. It's not something you expect to see. I would also say that as we were arriving, in front of me was Rachel's stink tank, which was a public toilet. So, you know, people having a bit of fun here. Let's have a quick chat. Colin, should we have another chat?
Yes.
What's going on here then? We've arrived, we made it.
We made it.
How are you feeling? Good
Fantastic.
journey?
I think there's going to be 1,400 tractors here in all.
1,400?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, you can see them all the way up.
Yes, so we're parked a lot tighter than we were last time. London has welcomed the farmers.
Yep.
And we're welcome to be here.
Excellent. Well, Colin, are you here for the whole protest?
I'm going to be here for the whole, till it ends.
Until it ends, mate. Right.
Till the government changes its minds.
Well, you might be here for quite a while. We'll have a chat later on as well, Colin.
Okay, thank you very much.
Tom, back to you. We're going to be here all afternoon, keeping up with the latest as it develops here on Whitehall.
Adam Cherry will be back catching up with you and indeed my co-host Emily as well throughout the programme. Do stay with us here on Good Afternoon Britain. We're going to be live back in Westminster and, of course, taking a look at some of the other stories around as well after this very short break.
Hello, I'm here with your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Now, it's going to be pretty cloudy for many of us today and feeling cold too. Even a bit of rain, sleet and hill snow around for some of us. All of this is coming due to an easterly wind that we have coming in due to an area of high pressure over Scandinavia. It's not the strongest easterly wind, but nonetheless it's going to add to the cold feel to things because of the cold air across us and the largely cloudy sky. Some glimmers of sunshine across western Scotland, otherwise it's pretty grey, pretty gloomy. And like I said, there will be some outbreaks of rain, even some sleet and hill snow over the higher ground towards eastern parts in particular. Temperatures are a little bit on the low side, and as I mentioned, that easterly wind, it's not particularly strong, but where you get it, it's going to make it feel even chillier still. As we go into this evening, still clinging on to some clear skies across western parts of Scotland, but I am expecting the cloud to build, to push in as we go overnight. Eastern parts of Scotland seeing some rain, sleet and snow over higher ground as well. A little bit of rain across some parts of Northern Ireland, but nothing particularly heavy. But down the eastern side of England, we are going to have some rain, sleet and snow pushing its way, and even across parts of the southeast. Don't be surprised if we see a little bit of snow falling as we go through this evening, but I'm not expecting much to settle. Drier towards the west, always drier here, but it is going to be pretty cloudy. Like I say, the cloud building from the east as we go overnight. And with that in mind, we are still going to have more damp weather pushing into eastern parts, but with the cloudier skies for many, yes, it is going to be chilly, but temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Low single figures for most of us, perhaps a touch of frost where we do get some clearer skies. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, it's somewhat of a repeat story. Eastern parts again seeing some rain, sleet or snow pushing through. Often cloudy for many of us, cloudier than today for western parts of Scotland. There is some rain close to the southwest, but this may not make too much progress in across the land, and temperatures still a little bit below average for the time of year.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. In East Yorkshire, Stone Ferry Road in Hull is blocked after a vehicle hit a bridge, causing delays. In Staffordshire, the A53 is closed in both directions at Leek after an accident. Delays towards there, and as you divert on the M6 in Warwickshire, there are southbound queues after traffic was stopped between junctions 3 and 2 from Coventry to the M69. On the M5 in Worcestershire, there are 2 lanes closed southbound after an accident between junctions 7 and 8 from the A44 Worcester and Evesham turn to the M50, causing queues. Now, trains on the Isle of Wight have been stopped between Shanklin and Ryde Esplanade. That is because of track safety checks. In Devon on the A38, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between Chudley and Chudley Knighton, causing queues. And there are delays to Skybus flights between Land's End and the Isles of Scilly because of poor weather conditions. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 38 minutes past 1, farmers have descended upon the capital. Indeed, descended upon Westminster. Up to 1,400 tractors have approached the seat of Parliament in this country. We're just looking at the stage that is being set up as we speak. Why are they here today? Well, a petition signed by around 150,000 people in this country is to be debated in Parliament today. The petition calls on the government to not change the inheritance tax rules, to not impose for the first time a significant level of inheritance tax upon family farms that want to pass their small or medium-sized farms on from one generation to the next, that want to be able to continue that family tradition and that family business. That is being debated in Westminster Hall this afternoon. And so the farmers have descended upon Parliament to make sure that they put their message across in front of the decision makers, the ministers, the members of Parliament who will be discussing this today. Of course, the change came about in the budget last year. It was a surprise for farmers. This was not in the manifesto of the Labour Party back in the June election. This hit people out of nowhere, and many farmers have been organising over the months since that budget. This is the third time we've seen tractors descend upon Westminster. And it's not just tractors. Our intrepid political editor Christopher Hope has spotted what he described as a tank amidst those tractors. We're going to try and find that for you in a little moment's time. Of course, my co-host Emily Carver is there on the ground, as is Adam Cherry, our tractor correspondent. At least that's what we're calling him today. We're looking across this protest because ultimately, well, let's ask Emily herself. Emily Carver, live on the ground. What's happening?
OK, I am live on the ground, yes, here in Whitehall in the thick of it, really. We've got hundreds of tractors imposed here in Whitehall, outside the Houses of Parliament, got Downing Street behind us. Lots of farmers here protesting, huge numbers of farmers, actually. There must be hundreds, if not thousands, of tractors here. And I'm delighted to say that I'm going to enter a tractor, because why not? I'm here to join the farmers and see what they're campaigning about. And Ellis is going to let me into his tractor. Thank you very much. Ellis is, he's cleaning it up for me. It's a bit muddy. I think that's OK. You've come all the way from Leicestershire today. I mean, how long did that take you to get here?
Well, I mean, we left about 5 a.m. and then, it took a good 6 hours or so, yeah.
It took 6 hours. I guess you can't pick up massive speeds in a vehicle like this?
No, about 30 mile per hour. It's, yeah, best you get in.
And did you come in convoy or were you on your own?
Came in convoy. There was about 40 of us from Leicestershire that all came down together. So there was a fair number of us. We're all lost each other now, but yeah.
You've all lost each other. And forgive me, you look rather young. How old are you?
I'm 21.
You're 21. So how long have you been farming for then?
All my life. I've got a family farm, so since I could walk. pretty much, yeah.
And presumably that's exactly why you're here. Tell me what your message is, really, for the government at the moment.
Well, they just need to, either back up on the law and start getting better, or leave.
And what is it about this law that really, gets to you?
So, it's obviously the inheritance tax, and say if my granddad was to pass away, it would mean we'd have to pay, I think it'd be in like the millions of pounds just to inherit our farm, so we'd lose so much of it.
And what do you say to people who say, farmers, they own all this land, they've got all this wealth and assets and all of this, why not tax them?
They don't understand that you've got to spend all this money just to make a bit of money. Like, it's amazing how much one of these tractors would cost, for instance.
How much does one of these cost you? Set you back?
Well, most tractors here these days are they're like between £100,000 and £200,000.
Yeah, and I was reading that a lot of people are putting off the decision whether to buy a tractor, whether to buy, a combo harvester. That's what they're called, isn't it? Yeah, I know. Because they're not sure where things are going to be with the taxes and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they don't want to take the risk if it falls back on them.
Well, thank you very much indeed for letting me in your tractor. Good luck to you, and keep farming. 21 years old, Ellis from Leicestershire has come all the way 6 hours. It's taken him a maximum speed of 30 miles per hour, so you can tell it's been a long journey all the way. He came in a convoy of a couple of dozen other tractors and farmers from the area coming down here, all with one mission: to try and change the government's mind when it comes to this inheritance tax decision.
Well, Emily Carver, thanks so much for being on the ground for us, getting a little bit muddy in the cause of journalism and climbing on those tractors. It's absolutely fantastic stuff. I've got to ask you, what does the site look like? I mean, we can see you in the thicket, sort of surrounded by 3 tractors now. How far does this stretch?
Yeah, I want to take you for a little walkabout, if that's okay. Is that okay, Joe? Yes, fantastic. Cameraman is on board. Let's go weave our way through. Thank you, guys. Let's weave our way through all of these tractors. As you can see, they're all shapes and sizes. Some have bigger wheels than others. They're all vacated at the moment. The farmers have got out. They've put their tractor in park mode. They've got out to see all the action. And as we go past, lots of Union flags, lots of Save British Farming going on, other slogans as well. We're going to weave through here just for a moment. Come through here. We've got no farmers, no food, no future. That's a slogan that we're seeing a lot of. Back British farmers, lots of flags with our farmers, hashtag together. If we come through here, we can see there are even more tractors. They just go on and on and on as we near closer to Parliament Square. We've got here Reed and Reeves, the communist thieves. Lots of people mentioning the word communism, actually, when it comes to this tax. They see it as a theft, that's for sure. Lots of other slogans as well. We've got Stuck Farmer, that's one that keeps coming up. Stuck Farmer, because we all need a farmer 3 times a day. That's referring to the 3 meals that we eat, of course, breakfast, lunch and dinner. We've got Starmer, Farmer, Harmer. That's another one that we keep seeing repeated in the area. And of course, Stuck Farmer, because we all need a farmer 3 times a day. That's good stuff. And as you can see, just the tractors, there are just so many who've come from all across the country, from Staffordshire, from Leicestershire, from Sussex, from London, from all over the country to try and make their voices heard. Here from East Riding, Yorkshire, no farmers, no food. But we're going to be bringing you coverage throughout the afternoon. At 3:15, we're expecting speeches to start. We're going to be hearing from the National Farmers Union. We're also going to be hearing from anti-food poverty charities as well, and politicians too. There are a lot of politicians here out and about trying to support the farmers. There is a big question about who farmers trust to act in their best interests. They're not pleased with the Labour government, but is there someone else that they can get behind as well, who they believe can be trusted with their future and their future of farming? So here we are coming up to Parliament Square, which is where I'm going to leave you for now, but I'll be back very soon to bring you more live coverage from the farmers' protest.
Absolutely fantastic stuff. We love a walk and talk, and just seeing the scale of that backlog of tractors there. Emily Carver will catch up with you in just a moment's time. Thanks for joining us, of course. Now, of course, farmers will be throughout the day making speeches, showing their thoughts, their feelings, their anxieties, really. And let's hope that politicians can listen. But do stay with us here on Good Afternoon Britain. Plenty more to come. Indeed, there's been a new government appointment, a new health minister. She's got some strange views about llamas.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The weather in the Mediterranean this week is looking a bit mixed. We do have some showers lingering, particularly around the Adriatic at the moment, parts of Italy and France as well. Thunderstorms recently across Malta and Sicily should be clearing off a little bit. Generally, there's some brighter skies for parts of southern Spain, though we do have this rain band pushing into areas of Portugal as well. Once that system does clear, though, it's generally expected to turn a touch brighter for western areas, though still rather changeable further towards the east.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It's the body image thing that concerns me. It's young girls watching Love Island and really skinny girls and young boys
hit
exactly.
the gym but after this. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, they're seeing perfect bodies on the screen.
You don't need to go in the gym, Maymoon. You look gorgeous as you are, love.
I know. You see, the reason I don't enter anything like that, Kerry, is you know
you're going to win.
Exactly. And it's not fair. It's not fair, I think, on everybody else being there.
It's not fair.
No.
But Kerry, what do you think about the body image thing? You know, when you talk about your daughter, is that something that you'd worry about, her comparing herself to the likes of what she sees on the screen?
Now, this is where there's a conflict of interest for me because I've been brought up in this industry since I was 17, so it's massively affected me. I mean, when you're put on the front cover of magazines after having a baby with a stretch mark in the circle of shame, you know, it does do a psychological effect on you. I think a lot of celebrities who have been around for so many years as I have been affected by that. But everyone has to bear in mind, I've had my children. I'm in my 40s. I feel I'm entitled to have my tweaks and try and improve on what I think are going down south and health and safety, tripping over any things that I don't want to be tripping over anymore. But I definitely do believe, I mean, majority of the young girls that go on Love Island, they all have the same big lips, the same big eyelashes, all the butt implants, and they're barely in their 20s. You know, it's if you go to the airport now, I remember going to the airport and I looked around and all the girls looked exactly the same.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 10 minutes to 2, a world first. Yes, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom has taken publicly an HIV test, all to promote the greater adoption of HIV testing across the country, as unfortunately HIV diagnoses have been rising for the last couple of years. Well, delighted to be joined now by the Chief Executive of the Terence Higgins Trust, the man who helped the Prime Minister administer this HIV test, Richard Angel. Richard, why is the Prime Minister doing this today?
The Prime Minister has been long committed to ending new cases of HIV by 2030, something he picked up, I think, around 2020, and since then it had a firm place in Labour's manifesto. They promised to start a new action plan within 100 days, and they kicked it off within just 88. We had the first World AIDS Day reception in Downing Street for 17 years, and he announced 27 million to bring the very popular and successful A&E testing that the last government did to 90 A&Es now. And I think he's seeing that commitment through by doing his bit to fight the stigma and encourage people across the country to know their HIV status. When we did a poll, 80% of Britons did not know you can test for HIV at home. Not surprising, it's a relatively new innovation. But when asked for their preference, it was by far their top choice. So who better to champion this to the whole country, and in fact around the world, is have the first G7, G20 leader promoting and doing a HIV test.
It's a pretty significant moment, but of course, Richard, this is coming in the context of what was very positive news on HIV diagnosis up until a few years ago. I mean, they were tumbling, and now we've seen a concerning rise in the last couple of years, a concerning rise in HIV transmission, particularly amongst migrant communities, amongst straight communities.
Well, we've seen broadly a plateauing across the board as it's come down over the years. And we are struggling to get those numbers down further, which is why we're taking tests to wider communities, why we're trying to make them available in more settings to make that happen and ensure that people can access a HIV test. You can only acquire HIV from somebody with HIV, and broadly, if you don't know about it and you're not taking your medication. So we want to make sure we've diagnosed the 5,200 people across the UK who are living with undiagnosed HIV, make sure they get access to their medication, and they can't pass it on.
OK, well, Richard Angel, OBE, Chief Executive of the Terence Higgins Trust, thanks so much for joining us and sharing those pictures too of the Prime Minister pricking his finger live on camera. Well, do stay with us here on Good Afternoon Britain. We're going to be live back in Westminster, where farmers have descended upon the capital. We can hear them now. This is live footage. We'll be back with these farmers, their tractors, and the words they have for the Prime Minister after your very latest weather forecast. Do stay with us here on Good Afternoon Britain. It's a big day for the farming community. It's a big day for these politicians too.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm here with your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Now, it's going to be pretty cloudy for many of us today and feeling cold too. Even a bit of rain, sleet and hill snow around for some of us. All of this is coming due to an easterly wind that we have coming in due to an area of high pressure over Scandinavia. It's not the strongest easterly wind, but nonetheless, it's going to add to the cold feel to things because of the cold air across us and the largely cloudy sky. Some glimmers of sunshine across western Scotland. Otherwise, it's pretty grey, pretty gloomy. And like I said, there will be some outbreaks of rain, even some sleet and hill snow over the higher ground towards eastern parts in particular. Temperatures are a little bit on the low side, and as I mentioned, that easterly wind, it's not particularly strong, but where you get it, it's going to make it feel even chillier still. As we go into this evening, still clinging on to some clear skies across western parts of Scotland, but I am expecting the cloud to build, to push in as we go overnight. Eastern parts of Scotland seeing some rain, sleet and snow over higher ground as well. A little bit of rain across some parts of Northern Ireland, but nothing particularly heavy. But down the eastern side of England, we are going to have some rain, sleet and snow pushing its way, and even across parts of the southeast. Don't be surprised if we see a little bit of snow falling as we go through this evening, but I'm not expecting much to settle. Drier towards the west, always remains dry here, but it is going to be pretty cloudy. Like I say, the cloud building from the east as we go overnight. And with that in mind, we are still going to have more damp weather pushing into eastern parts, but with the cloudier skies for many, yes, it is going to be chilly, but temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Low single figures for most of us, perhaps a touch of frost where we do get some clearer skies. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, it's somewhat of a repeat story. Eastern parts again seeing some rain, sleet or snow pushing through. Often cloudy for many of us, cloudier than today for western parts of Scotland. There is some rain close to the southwest, but this may not make too much progress in across the land, and temperatures still a little bit below average for the time of year.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. First, you'll win a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash to spend however you like. You'll also receive the very latest iPhone 16, and we'll send you on a shopping spree with £500 to spend in your favourite store. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Monday, the 10th of February. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver, and I'm here in Whitehall in the heart of Westminster as hundreds, if not thousands, of tractors descend on the capital to make their voices heard. You can see behind me, we can't afford to feed you anymore on current farm gate prices. Urgent message from farmers. I'm going to be here all day.
Illegally in nail bars, car washes, restaurants and other businesses have been arrested as part of the government's effort to tighten UK border security. Our very own Mark White has the story.
Authorities say there has been a 73% increase in the number of immigration raids, and of course in terms of the arrests, the deportations. those deported are up as well. We'll have more in a few minutes.
And not another one. After the resignation of Health Minister Andrew Gwynn following controversial WhatsApp conversations, the government have appointed new Health Minister Andy Dalton. Strange views on llamas, this new Health Minister. More on that in a bit.
Right.
Straight to you, Emily.
Are you waiting? It's the headlines. Da, 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 da.
I think we're having some communication issues here, but Emily, if you can hear me live from Westminster, straight to you.
I can now hear you. Sorry about that, Tom. I can now hear you. Yes, I am here right at the front of the protest on Whitehall, and I'm delighted to be joined by the Shadow Environment Secretary, Victoria Atkins, who's here to support farmers. Victoria, tell me a little bit more about why you've chosen to be here.
Well, look, today Whitehall is filled to the rim with tractors, but also importantly with farming people. And this is just the next stage in our campaign across rural communities to try to get this Labour government to axe the family farm tax. I've represented a very rural agricultural seat in Lincolnshire for a decade now, and I can understand only too well the terrible choice that Labour has made. And this is a choice. They have decided to do this, but also the impact it is already having on farming. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was at the LAMA conference, which is the largest conference of agricultural machinery in the country, and people were saying that they weren't investing in the future because they were so worried about the impact that this tax would have on their farms in the coming years. So this is having an impact today, and this is why people have travelled from all over the country to try to ensure that this message gets through to the Labour government that this tax is wrong, they should axe it, and if they won't do it, we as a Conservative government will reverse the family farm tax if and when we're in government.
OK, so you'd reverse it day one. Speaking to farmers, covering this issue for the past however many months, 4 months I think it's been, one thing you learn is that farmers are very reasonable people. You know, they don't think that money grows on trees, they don't think that the national finances are in a brilliant state. Even some have said that there could be a compromise when it comes to this tax, that they don't like this inheritance tax raid, but perhaps there could be some kind of compromise. Do you agree?
Well, look, I do not understand how this Labour government thinks that it is okay to spend more than the entire DEFRA budget on some deal with a foreign government in relation to the Chagos Island surrender, and yet they're not prepared to look at the consequences of this tax. And by the way, we have the evidence. You know, the government said go away and speak to your advisors, get the advice on what this will mean for your individual farms. Well, farmers have done exactly that, and we have the Office of Budget Responsibility saying that there's a high degree of uncertainty as to whether this tax will actually raise the money that Labour will claim it will, and yet it is damaging our farms as this policy is continued to be supported by Labour MPs up and down the country. And so our message as Conservatives is, look, we understand the countryside. I am so proud to represent a rural seat in Lincolnshire. Some of my constituents are here today. I understand, you know, I open my front door and I'm surrounded by arable fields. We understand this. We will reverse this tax, but more importantly, I as Shadow Secretary of State for Farming want to build proper policies for farming, the future of farming in our country over the coming years, so that at the next election we have a real choice for people, and it is a positive choice for the future rather than this terrible vindictive tax that seems to be what the Labour Party thinks of the countryside at the moment.
Now, of course, you're in the opposition. You know, besides turning up to events like this and showing your support at rallies and protests and speaking to farmers in your community and around the country, what are you going to do to try and force the government to U-turn? You know, it's all well and good coming to these types of protests, but what can actually be done?
Well, of course, we have the enormous majority that Labour is relying on to force this through. But we have tried tried to get Labour MPs representing rural seats to really think about the choice they have when they walk into the division lobby in support of their government's policy. And just before Christmas, we forced a debate, but also importantly a vote, whereby we asked Labour MPs to vote with us to support family farms. Sadly, no Labour MP supported our motion, and so they have made it very clear, those rural Labour MPs have made it very clear to their constituents that they will toe the party line rather than putting their constituents first. But this afternoon we have another bite at the cherry, because we are bringing forward the petitions debate that members of the public have voted for. They've asked Parliament to have this debate. We will be turning up as Conservatives to ensure that your voices, the voices of everyone here, are heard loud and clear in that debate, and we will continue to keep up the pressure in Parliament until the Labour Party does what they should do, which is U-turn on this and fall back off from this dreadful tax that they've brought forward.
Well, Victoria Atkins, thank you very much indeed. Shadow Environment Secretary. Well, if farmers know something, they know it's perseverance. This is the third protest of this scale here in Whitehall with the tractors rallying right here in central London in just 4 months. What I'm hearing from farmers who have come here from up and down the country is that they are going to continue to put pressure on the government until Rachel Reeves decides to U-turn.
Goodness me. Well, we'll be back with you, Emily, in just a moment's time, because now it's time for the latest news headlines.
Tom, Emily, thank you and good afternoon. I'm Katie Bowen in the GB newsroom. A brief bit of breaking news this lunchtime. Greater Manchester Police has said that a non-crime hate incident has been recorded in relation to a WhatsApp group involving at least 2 MPs. A Greater Manchester Police spokesman said, "We have received a small number of complaints relating to publicised messages allegedly from a WhatsApp group. A non-crime hate incident has been recorded and we are in contact with our parliamentary liaison as part of our initial inquiries." While Ashley Dalton, Labour MP for West Lancashire, has been appointed as a minister in the Department of Health and Social Care after Andrew Gwynn was sacked over the weekend. The appointment comes as the Chief Whip will meet with Labour MP Oliver Ryan today after an investigation was launched by the party into comments made in that WhatsApp group. The Member of Parliament for Burnley has apologised for unacceptable and deeply disappointing comments, which he deeply regrets and would not make today. Mr Ryan confirmed he was a member of the same WhatsApp group that featured racist and sexist messages that former Health Minister Andrew Gwynn was also part of. Farmers from across the country are arriving in Westminster this afternoon in protest against the government's family farm tax. Hundreds of farmers and their tractors are gathering in Whitehall. The rally, organised by Save British Farming, comes as a petition calling to keep current inheritance tax exemptions for working farms has reached almost 150,000 signatures. That's set to be debated in the Commons this afternoon. Labour has previously insisted it will not make a U-turn on its inheritance tax plans, saying that farmers are the backbone of Britain and that they are steadfast in their commitment to Britain's farming industry. Conservative MP James Cleverly spoke to Emily Carver earlier on.
I've got a rural constituency and I've spoken to my farmers about the potential impact of this incredibly poorly thought through policy. But even if I didn't have a rural constituency, we all eat food, and this is the food production industry. If we undermine this sector, everybody suffers. And this is an incredibly poorly thought through, rushed, botched, ill-conceived policy which will damage our food security, damage our rural economy, put a whole load of businesses out of business. And the best thing that the Labour government could do is drop it completely right now.
Elsewhere, at the start of National Apprenticeships Week, the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, has announced she is cutting red tape to provide more apprenticeships to support businesses. The plans announced today will deliver 10,000 more apprenticeships each year. The Education Secretary shared her plans earlier on.
What we're announcing will deliver 10,000 more apprenticeships every year, and that will be through ensuring that apprentices get their English and maths training on the job, so related to the area in which they're training, but also shorter course apprenticeships too, because not everyone requires that full 12 months. So we've listened to business, they've called for many of these changes, and we want to work with them to deliver the apprenticeship starts that we know right across the country, parents in particular, are desperate to see.
Thousands of migrants who have been working illegally in the country have been arrested as part of the government's efforts to tighten border security. Around 4,000 arrests have been made and more than 5,000 immigration enforcement visits since Labour took power on the 5th of July. The government says that those often working illegally in nail bars, car washes and restaurants are sold false promises about living and working in the UK and are encouraged to make dangerous journeys to the country organised by criminal gangs. Later today, there'll be a second reading in the House of Commons of the government's Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill. The legislation would give new powers to police and immigration officers, including the ability to seize migrants' mobile phones to assist with investigations. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is now 11 minutes past 2. And farmers, of course, have descended on Whitehall to protest the government's proposed imposition of inheritance tax on family farms. Well, we can cross live to our reporter, Adam Cherry, who is in Westminster. He's been travelling with the farmers right the way through London as they've approached this rally. Adam, who are you with?
Well, Tom, I'm on Whitehall and we'll come to our guest in just a second. I just want to show viewers at home the location and what it looks like here on Whitehall. So you see we've got the cenotaph behind me, and if we keep walking this way, you'll see Downing Street over my right shoulder, and the speeches, which are about 3:15, so in just about an hour's time, they are taking place just over there, as you can see. Now, we'll spin back this way because I do have a guest. He's a dairy farmer from Yorkshire, is that right?
Pickering, yes.
Pickering. So, Charles Scaling, thank you for joining us on GB News. Why are you here today?
Well, the government's changes that they've made with the budget are very far-reaching, and there's a lot of things which aren't particularly being talked about as much. So there's things such as they're imposing a £50 a tonne of carbon tax on imported fertiliser, which is going to really increase the cost of production for us, and it's going to make us less viable to compete with foreign imports, because those foreign imports don't have that tax. And like I say, it's a £50 per tonne of carbon. Fertiliser is quite carbon intensive to produce, so it could potentially be £150 per tonne of actual fertiliser, which is a massive price hike when margins are already so thin.
So this is, it's not just a question of inheritance tax. You're saying there's actually another dimension to this that we're not talking about enough. I do want to ask more broadly, though, about the government's response. They say they're steadfast in supporting farmers. They provided £5 billion in the budget. That's what they said today in the Downing Street lobby briefing. You seem unconvinced.
Well, the £5 billion is a bit misleading because it's a £5 billion over 2 years, so it's actually only £2.5 billion, which is not a rise, and this budget hasn't risen in many years. So in real terms, we're actually getting far less because of large inflation of everything, of steel, of machinery, of fertiliser, all these sorts of things. So in reality, although they've kept that budget the same, it's in real terms it's a reduction, and also they've cut the grants that are available for doing environmental work. There's lots of grants available to encourage farmers to do environmental work on their farms, and DEFRA have cut those grants. So although the budget is there in theory, how are they going to get it to us, because they've cut one of the ways that they're paying us to do environmental work.
Charles, finally, I just want to ask, what is your message directly to the government? If Keir Starmer was standing right here in front of us, what would you say to him?
Just speak to us, speak to any of these farmers and get the real story, because I feel like everything that they proposed was very rushed through. I don't think that it was thought out at all. I mean, they didn't even tell DEFRA, we think. They didn't tell DEFRA before putting this in the budget. It was the NFU that actually told Steve Reed, and that's how little research they've done on any of these policies, and it's just going to decimate food production in this country.
Charles, thank you very much for joining us on GB News, really appreciate it. Well, there you go, Tom. Obviously a real strength of feeling here. It's been an interesting day for me, over 2.5 hours in one of the tractors, and as I said to you earlier, on that journey, it's really interesting to see the response from everyone as the convoy made its way through West London. Of course, it's a bit of a sight, isn't it? 120 tractors, but everyone was really enthusiastic, honking their horns, really supportive. So it's going to be a great day, and obviously the speeches are coming up in just over an hour's time.
Absolutely huge public sympathy, no doubt, with the farmers at this time. Adam Cherry, thanks for driving on that convoy all the way for us. We're going to cross over to another part of the protest now, where Emily Carver, my co-host, is, because Emily, you found a tank.
Yeah, Tom, sorry, Tom, Nick, I've got Nick here, but Tom, I've just found myself on a tank. Yes, we are surrounded by tractors, but I've managed to pinpoint, I believe, the only tank in Whitehall right now, unless someone can correct me, but this tank belongs to Nick here.
Nick from Tanks a Lot.
Nick from Tanks a Lot. Now, why are you here?
I'm here because I don't agree with the inheritance tax laws. I think it's a pretty mean thing to do. They tax you every way they can, then they wait for you to die, then they hit you with the biggest tax of all.
So it's the element of it being once someone passes away that really gets to you?
I think it's also the fact that if you've got a business involved where you need an awful lot of kit, I've got 300 tanks and a 100-acre farm, it probably won't slot into this inheritance tax thing at the moment, but it will. They'll chisel away and chisel away. It's the thin end of the wedge. And when my son goes to take over, if he's got to pay 40% inheritance tax, then, well, that's the end of the business.
Well, I mean, the government say, of course they say, that they need to do this, they need to raise some money somewhere. What do you say to that?
Pretty easy. Stop wasting it. Stop wasting it. Stop giving it away. Run the country like a business.
What would you axe?
What would I axe? Christ. I'd rather not say. Probably I'd be shot because there's no freedom of speech in this country anymore. First thing I'd do is every single member of parliament, I would say to them, have you been in business successfully for 20 years? And if they haven't, I would kick them out.
Well, I think a lot of people would agree with you that we need a little more business acumen.
Successfully for 20 years, it would be boot them out the door.
Well, there we go. That's Nick's proposal. Nick from Tanks a Lot, thank you very much indeed for allowing me to sit on your tank.
Prepared running the country for a couple of years.
Right, now I'm going to very carefully, thank you Nick, I'm very carefully going to hop, skip and jump off this tank, and luckily I've got some nice men to help me.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Right, now we're going to walk over here. Tom, are you following me? We're going to walk all the way over here. Thank you, Nick. That was Nick from Tanks a Lot. There you go. It's not just tractors here today. We've also got tanks. He's using his land for a tank business of sorts. And I believe we are coming over here to speak to these two lovely gentlemen. Hello, you're live on GB News. Thank you very much indeed. Now, we were talking a little bit earlier, weren't we, William, about the impact of this farmer tax. You're in Northern Ireland. Tell me what you think.
Look, the farmers do not have the money to pay this tax. I mean, you can't take tax of people that can't afford to pay, so it's ludicrous from that point of view. Secondly, it will put in Northern Ireland 50% of our farmers out of business as time goes on. And I mean, this has happened in America, so the proof's there.
And you're from the group Farmers for Action, aren't you?
Yes, Sean McCauley from Farmers for Action in Northern Ireland. Yeah, I'm fourth generation on the family farm at home, and in Northern Ireland we have a much more family farm structure of smaller farms. But I mean, just last week we saw valuations of land at £20,000 an acre, which would even be higher than what land's been valued at in the rest of the UK. So it's even more important in Northern Ireland, our family farm structure. As I say, my worry is now, is there going to be a fifth generation on the farm? And I think, you know, food security should be top of the agenda. It's not. And people need to realise that we're in the middle of a climate change crisis. Government is prepared to do trade deals with the other side of the world, bring food from the other side of the world, not maybe produced to the same standards as ours, and ignore the plight of farmers throughout the UK. It is not acceptable.
And how existential is this, do you think?
Well, look, the bottom line is things have to change. We are at a crunch point now, and this will all come to a head in March. Like, we have 3 times requested a meeting with the Chancellor now, and another 4th time coming up at the end of this month again, and then once in March we will ask again before the Chancellor's budget or Chancellor's speech, as I think it will be. And I mean, at that point, if she doesn't agree to meet us, and we do not want to meet her to ridicule her or do otherwise, we have a proposal: set aside the farm tax, put in place legislation on farm gate prices to get farmers properly paid, and the UK will boom. Because it's well-known fact in economics that you start at ground level with the farming community, as they did in the 1930s in America with Roosevelt's New Deal, and America snowballed.
Well, this is the thing, even if Rachel Reeves doesn't want to U-turn, even if she refuses to, which so far she has, could there not be some kind of compromise, just very quickly?
No, there's no compromise on the inheritance tax. I think
nothing at all. Nothing with capital gains. Nothing with anything like this. If you pass on land that's not going to be used for farming necessarily.
Well, you know, you're getting into finer details there, but the very clear message from the farming community is we're not backing down on this. And I mean, as this message behind, which I think you captured earlier, tells the story on most farms. We can't afford to feed the general public anymore. You know, we've been pushed and pushed and pushed to our if we are making any profits, it's so minimal that, I mean, this tax even been paid over a 10-year period. There is no farms out there can afford this extra pressure being put on them. So we're clearly saying no compromise on this. There can't be compromise on this. I mean, we saw this, as William rightly said there, we saw this when Donald Trump came in the last time in America. There was 50% inheritance tax. He did away with it. He put money in working class people's pockets in America, and that included the farmers. And he's came in again, and he's talking about the farmers again in America. We need this government to waken up before it's too late, because food security, as I said earlier, should be top of the agenda, and it's all linked in to our agricultural sector.
OK, well, there you go. We're going to have to leave it there, but we'll speak again. I'm sure that's Farmers for Action, Northern Ireland. No room for compromise at this stage. Rachel Reeves must U-turn.
So much for being there on the ground for us, for finding that tank too, and how spectacular it looks, might I add. Catching up with you in just a moment's time. Now, if you want to get away from all of the chaos and you fancy yourself a chance to be one of the 2 lucky winners in the current Great British Giveaway, well, we've got 2 fabulous prize bundles to give away, which both contain £500 worth of shopping vouchers from your favourite shop and the latest iPhone 16, as well as an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash. Here are all the details you'll need to win.
Don't miss your chance to be one of 2 big winners in our latest Great British Giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. First, you'll win a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash to spend however you like. You'll also receive the very latest iPhone 16, and we'll send you on a shopping spree with £500 to spend in your favourite store. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, very good luck to those who enter. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come on today's programme. Indeed, thousands of migrants working illegally in nail bars, car washes, restaurants, etc. They've been arrested as part of the government's efforts to tighten our border security. But how much further does the government need to go?
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
An absolute monster. It took Chloe and Sean Ing 90 minutes to reel in this gigantic 8-foot-long monster fish from Chigborough Fisheries in Essex. And upon weighing this enormous marine beast, it was found to have been 7 pounds heavier than the existing British record, a 143-pound catfish caught also in Essex. But as I understand it, you actually went for a Chinese meal when fate struck. Is that right?
That's correct. So I was fishing an area of Chigborough where you have to fish at a fair distance. So I cast my rods out and then we ordered a Chinese. And yeah, so I got the bite at about 10 to 8 at night. And then about 20 minutes into it, my phone started ringing, the Chinese guys at the gate with my delivery. So I had to send a couple of guys off to go and get it. And then, yeah, the fight, obviously, you can't just stop the fight to go and get your Chinese. So, yeah, the fight went on, for about an hour and a half in total. There's no net in the world that's big enough for this fish. So we had to send out, first of all, I sent out a mate, Alex. He went out there to go and basically use what we call a sling. So that's a safe apparatus that we use to take the fish out of the water. He then went to and he turned around and he was like, we're going to need another sling. So then we sent out another friend with a sling, and these slings are 4 foot long each. So then we had the catfish wrapped up in 2 slings, and it was still slightly longer than that. And then we got to a point where we was like, now we've got to try and get it out of the water to photo, to weigh it, because obviously we knew then that it was possibly going to be a UK record.
GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 26 minutes past 2. Now, thousands of illegal workers have been arrested as part of the government's bid to tighten border security. They were found to be working illegally in places like car washes, nail bars and restaurants. Almost 4,000 arrests have now been made so far, a steep rise in the figures for the same time last year. So let's dive into the detail now with our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, a fresh push from the government.
Yes, and as always, there's good news and there's bad news. So the good news for those that are concerned about the level of illegal migration in this country is that the government is stepping up efforts, as it promised to do, to try to go after those working here illegally and removing them. So as well as the increase in immigration enforcement raids, so we've got some 5,000 since Labour came to power, and just in the last month in January, there was more than 800 raids, 600 people arrested. That's up 73% on the same period the previous year. And we understand that later this afternoon, early this evening, we'll be able to give you more details about a very significant increase in the number of people being removed and deported, along with footage we released for the first time showing foreign national offenders and other illegal immigrants being put on a plane and removed from the country. Very controversial move, but the government's decided to do that as an effort to go down the road of transparency and also, of course, to try to prove to people that they are serious about tackling illegal immigration. That's the good news. The bad news is that very few of the people on these deportation flights are those who are coming across the Channel in that most public display of the migrant crisis played in, you know, day out, day in, every time we get sort of decent weather in the Channel.
That is, I suppose, the most frustrating thing here. The people that are being most easily deported are those that arrive in the sort of least abrasive way, I suppose. You know, overstaying a visa, arriving via an aeroplane, you know, stamping their passport, all the rest of it, and then overstaying. These are the majority of people that are going, whereas the people that turn up on small boats, well, they're given taxpayer money, they're given taxpayer accommodation. Many of them aren't the ones who are working, who are the ones that are being deported.
It's the asylum system that is the issue and the massive hold-up here. If you're an immigration offender and you're caught, you don't claim asylum, then it's very easy to remove you to your country of origin, unless, of course, it's an unsafe country like Afghanistan and Iran or alike. But, of course, most of those who are coming and working here illegally, many of them are from the likes of Eastern Europe, quite a lot from Africa as well. It is, as long as they don't claim asylum, easier to get them removed relatively quickly. And then you've got foreign national offenders, some very unsavoury individuals convicted of rape, murder, drug stealing and alike, who are also removed. Much easier to do that, providing they don't invoke human rights law to try to stay here in the UK, which of course some do.
It's the get-out clause for any of these people. Yeah. They can be over here clearly as an economic migrant working illegally, and as long as they say, I'm an asylum seeker, suddenly they're into an entirely separate part of our immigration system, the broken asylum system, and it's almost impossible to remove them.
Yeah, I mean, it's fortunate for the government in a way that quite a lot of the people that they pick up on immigration enforcement raids are happy to leave, because they're here people that don't necessarily want to come here for the long term. They want to come over, make a fast buck, and then return to their countries where the standard of living is not necessarily anywhere near what it is in the UK. So it's all about making that money, and they'll go, some of them, of course, again, this is highly controversial, take an incentive, a financial incentive, to go back to their own country.
We pay them to go back?
Sometimes a few £1,000s.
Wow.
Go back to their own country, yeah. So that's highly controversial. Yeah. But then the counter-argument to that is, if they stay, if they enter the asylum system or whatever...
That's even more expensive.
Then much, much more expensive.
You'd think we could just put them in handcuffs and put them on a plate. We don't have to... Why do we have to incentivise them?
Well, it's all about, of course, abiding by international law and human rights law. And we know that out of all the prime ministers we've had in recent years, I think Sir Keir Starmer is probably more determined to abide by the rule of international law than others have been. Yeah. Having said that, though, those they can remove that are illegal and that don't go into the asylum system or claim human rights infringements to stay, then they are removing them, and that's what we'll see later today with this footage, which will include some shots of people who are restrained, that they've got, cuffs around their hands that are sort of fastened around their waists.
Well, we'll keep our eyes peeled, stay watching GB News for that footage that is going to be released for the first time ever, footage of deportations in the United Kingdom by aeroplane. Well, Mark White, we'll see you in a little bit with that. But do stay with us on Good Afternoon Britain. There's plenty more coming on today's show. We're going to be live back in Westminster. We can see pictures live here of the front of that convoy of perhaps over 1,000, maybe 1,400 tractors down Whitehall. We'll be back there after your news headlines.
Tom, thank you. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Brief bit of breaking news this lunchtime. Greater Manchester Police has said that a non-crime hate incident has been recorded in relation to a WhatsApp group chat involving at least 2 MPs. A Greater Manchester Police spokesman said, we have received a small number of complaints relating to publicised messages allegedly from a WhatsApp group. A non-crime hate incident has been recorded, and we were in contact with our parliamentary liaison as part of our initial inquiries. It comes as Ashley Dalton, the Labour MP for West Lancashire, has been appointed as a minister in the Department of Health and Social Care after Andrew Gwynn was sacked over the weekend. The Chief Whip will meet with Labour MP Oliver Ryan today after an investigation was launched by the party into comments made in the same WhatsApp group as Mr Gwynn. The Member of Parliament for Burnley has apologised for unacceptable and deeply disappointing comments, which he deeply regrets and would not make today. Farmers from across the country have descended on Westminster this afternoon in protest against the government's family farm tax. Hundreds of farmers and their tractors are gathering in Whitehall. The rally, organised by Save British Farming, comes as a petition calling to keep current inheritance tax exemptions for working farms has reached almost 150,000 signatures. That's set to be debated in the Commons this afternoon. Labour has previously insisted it will not make a U-turn on its inheritance tax plans, saying that farmers are the backbone of Britain and that they are steadfast in their commitment to Britain's farming industry. Conservative MP James Cleverly spoke to Emily Carver earlier on.
I've got a rural constituency, and I've spoken to my farmers about the potential impact of this incredibly poorly thought through policy. But even if I didn't have a rural constituency, we all eat food, and this is the food production industry. If we undermine this sector, everybody suffers. And this is an incredibly poorly thought through, rushed, botched, ill-conceived policy which will damage our food security, damage our rural economy, put a whole load of businesses out of business. And the best thing that the Labour government could do is drop it completely right now.
Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Tatiana Sanchez will bring you more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, I'm here with your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Now, it's going to be pretty cloudy for many of us today and feeling cold too. Even a bit of rain, sleet and hill snow around for some of us. All of this is coming due to an easterly wind that we have coming in due to an area of high pressure over Scandinavia. It's not the strongest easterly wind, but nonetheless, it's going to add to the cold feel to things because of the cold air across us and the largely cloudy skies. Some glimmers of sunshine across western Scotland. Otherwise, it's pretty grey, pretty gloomy. And like I said, there will be some outbreaks of rain, even some sleet and hill snow over the higher ground towards eastern parts in particular. Temperatures are a little bit on the low side, and as I mentioned, that easterly wind, it's not particularly strong, but where you get it, it's going to make it feel even chillier still. As we go into this evening, still clinging on to some clear skies across western parts of Scotland, but I am expecting the cloud to build, to push in as we go overnight. Eastern parts of Scotland seeing some rain, sleet and snow over higher ground as well. A little bit of rain across some parts of Northern Ireland, but nothing particularly heavy. But down the eastern side of England, we are going to have some rain, sleet and snow pushing its way, and even across parts of the southeast. Don't be surprised if we see a little bit of snow falling as we go through this evening, but I'm not expecting much to settle. Drier towards the west, always drier here, but it is going to be pretty cloudy. Like I say, the cloud building from the east as we go overnight. And with that in mind, we are still going to have more damp weather pushing into eastern parts, but with the cloudier skies for many, yes, it is going to be chilly, but temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Low single figures for most of us, perhaps a touch of frost where we do get some clearer skies. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, it's somewhat of a repeat story. Eastern parts again seeing some rain, sleet or snow pushing through. Often cloudy for many of us, cloudier than today for western parts of Scotland. There is some rain close to the southwest, but this may not make too much progress in across the land, and temperatures still a little bit below average for the time of year.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Russell Holding. There's disruption to some Calmac Firth of Clyde sailings because of poor weather conditions in East Yorkshire. Stone Ferry Road in Hull is blocked off Cleveland Street, where a vehicle hit a bridge causing delays. In Staffordshire, the A53 is closed in both directions, northeast of Leek, after an accident causing delays. Trains in Essex have been stopped between Shenfield and Chelmsford because of a level crossing problem. In London, the A20 is closed each way along Lewisham High Street for an investigation. It's closed between the Lehigh Road, Belmont Hill Junction and Reynolds Street, causing long delays on approaches to there, with 18 bus routes having to divert. There are some cancelled Gatwick Express train services after a signalling problem, and there are delays to Skybus flights between Land's End and the Isles of Scilly because of poor weather conditions.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past 2 and farmers have descended on Whitehall to protest the government's proposed imposition of inheritance tax on family-run farms. This is the third time in 4 months that the rural revolt has rolled its way to Parliament Square, demanding Rachel Reeves' U-turns on what they're calling the closing of the mines moment for British farms. Today promises to be the biggest protest yet, and through it all, my co-host Emily Carver is there live in Westminster. Who have you got with you, Emily?
I am indeed. I'm here in Westminster. I'm currently wedged between, well, hundreds of tractors here. The farmers have all vacated. They've parked their vehicles in this area and they're out protesting their cause. I'm just going to walk through, give you another taste of what's going on here. At about 3 o'clock, there are going to be speeches at a big stage just behind me. And then later on there is that debate in Parliament at 4:30 on an e-petition that got well over 100,000 signatures to U-turn on the inheritance tax decision. Now, we're just going to come around here because I'm delighted to say we're joined by two people, indeed, Robert Jenrick, Shadow Justice Secretary, and Robert Verney, who is a farmer from Exmoor, North Devon. Robert, start with you. Why is it important that you're here today?
Well, I've come to support the thousands of farmers who are here and all of our rural communities right across the country. People are very fearful and worrying right now because they always thought they could hand on their family farms to their kids and their grandkids. And now suddenly, as a result of this policy by Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, they are concerned that's just not going to be possible. And so we're here to send a very loud message to the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. There is still time to listen and to change tack, so that we can help to protect our food security, our rural communities, and relieve all of this worry and concern that is currently racking people right across rural Britain.
Yeah, do you feel like Kemi Badenoch, as Tory leader, has spent enough time hammering this point?
Yep, Kemi represents a rural community in Essex. She's been out meeting farmers, and she was here today, driving, in fact, into Parliament Square on one of those tractors earlier. So everybody is united in the Conservative Party, backing our farmers, backing rural communities. We just want the government to listen to farmers like Rob, who's a fourth-generation farmer, who simply wants to get on, do his job, and to be able to have the security of knowing that when the time comes, his farm can be handed on to him as it was in earlier generations. That's all we're asking for.
Well, let's speak to Robert, fourth-generation farmer. North Devon is your patch.
Yeah.
Why are you here today? Why do you feel so strongly that you just had to be here?
I think as farmers we don't feel valued anymore. Food in general isn't valued anymore. If it was, we probably wouldn't have so much of a problem paying tax. But, you know, yeah, it's just everybody's patience is wearing thin. We start off at the beginning of a year not knowing how much money we're going to make. You know, we've got to deal with the weather. You know, you can try to make hay in July, but if it rains all the time, you're not going to make hay.
Yeah, do you think people understand just how much graft goes in? I spent a day at a farm in Exmoor and that was tiring enough.
Yeah, I don't think people have a clue, to be honest with you. But we're just constantly farming in blind optimism, and yeah, we're wearing thin, and patients are wearing thin. So.
And you're fourth generation. Are you worried that potentially you could be hit with costs down the line?
Oh yeah, but the reason we're here today is to try and do something about it. You know, we can't just sit at home and just feel sorry for ourselves. You know, we've got to stand up, have a voice, and, you know, we're all here together. And I think the amount of tractors that are here, the amount of people that are here, you know, wish the government would just wake up and smell the bacon.
Yeah, and Robert Jenrick, it feels as though, from being here and covering this issue for 4 months or so now, that this is about more than just the inheritance tax. This is about more than even just the farmers themselves and the industry. It's almost as though it's about the little guy being hammered.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's about, you know, people who are trying to earn a living, working incredibly hard. These are some of the most hard-working people in Britain who are being hammered by the government. And I think it's also about rural communities feeling that they are not listened to by politicians of all stripes, frankly, and by people in big cities like London, the elite who runs our country. And it's time that we did pay heed to our rural communities because, you know, we are so lucky to live in a country with the farming community we have, the beautiful countryside that they maintain, the food security that they help us to continue and to pass on to the next generation. And that is why we really urge Rachel Reeves to change this policy. There is still time. Fix this, do the right thing, help us to help the farming community.
Well, it certainly seems as though the farmers are persevering with this one. This is the third mass tractor protest here in Whitehall in just 4 months. This is the biggest yet, hundreds, if not, I'm hearing that there are 1,400 tractors that have now tallied up here. It could be more, there could be more even to come. But yes, speeches start at 3:15, then 4:30 is that debate in Parliament. Back to you, Tom.
Emily, will be, of course, following you throughout the day. Yes, a bit more from you a little bit later. Now, away from Westminster, if you're in search of some winter sun, here's the forecast for some of those top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The weather in the Mediterranean this week is looking a bit mixed. We do have some showers lingering, particularly around the Adriatic at the moment, parts of Italy and France as well. Thunderstorms recently across Malta and Sicily should be clearing off a little bit. Generally, there's some brighter skies for parts of southern Spain, though we do have this rain band pushing into areas of Portugal as well. Once that system does clear, though, it's generally expected to turn a touch brighter for western areas, though still rather changeable further towards the east.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Newly released MI5 files reveal that Queen Elizabeth II was kept in the dark over the treachery of a senior courtier.
Yeah, for almost a decade. This is Sir Anthony Blunt, who played a double life, passing intelligence, the KGB, during World War II as a senior MI5 officer. But, remarkably, he was allowed to keep his position amid fears of a major scandal if the truth came out.
Well, now those files have been released by the National Archives, which includes the Queen's response to finding out a trusted member like Anthony Blunt was really a traitor.
Well, joining us now in the studio is GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Good to see you this morning, Cameron. This is astonishing.
Oh, absolutely. And this wasn't a little spy. This was Anthony Blunt was a full-blown spy. He passed to the Soviets the D-Day deception plans during the Second World War. He was working for MI5, but a double agent for the KGB as well.
The wrong plans.
He passed on the plans.
The wrong ones.
The wrong one in 1944. Yeah. Exactly. But he then got a job inside Buckingham Palace as one of the Queen's most trusted aides and courtiers, the surveyor of her art, essentially like kind of an art advisor for her late Majesty. There was always suspicions about Anthony Blunt way back in the early 50s because he was part of this notorious Cambridge spy ring, a group of 5 boys recruited at Cambridge. 2 of these people fled to Moscow in 1951. Anthony stayed behind in London and subsequently got a job inside Buckingham Palace, and it wasn't until 1964 that he confessed to his treachery. The reason he confessed was because he was granted immunity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It is 12 minutes now to 3 o'clock. This is Good Afternoon Britain, and Donald Trump made history by becoming the first sitting US president to attend a Super Bowl yesterday. Yes, the Super Bowl, the American football enormous championship. It's a big deal the other side of the pond. But when entering the stadium, the president was greeted by loud cheers. Celebrities, including Taylor Swift and Bradley Cooper, were also in attendance of arguably the biggest sporting event of America's calendar year. Before the game, President Trump walked onto the field to meet families of the victims of the New Year's Day terror attack in the city, of course in Louisiana as it is, as well as police and other emergency personnel. Let's discuss it all with the former advisor on UK affairs to the US Congress, Lee Cohen. Lee, thanks for joining us. It was a pretty unusual Super Bowl, not least because of the cheers for an incumbent US president.
Well, Tom, as you said,
President Trump made history last night by being the first sitting president to attend the Super Bowl. It's a testament to his engagement with the American people of all stripes, and of his understanding of what resonates with the American people. In short order, Tom, Trump has reclaimed the domain of sports as a unifying cultural space, moving away from the woke trend of the NFL's previous focus on social justice initiatives like end racism.
This, of course, came as, I think we can hear a little clip of the president receiving these cheers, perhaps unexpectedly, last night. Let's listen in. But Lee, this stood in contrast to what happened when Taylor Swift appeared on the screen. I think we've got a clip we can play now. It's quite the difference.
Well, Tom, the crowd's reaction told a story louder than any halftime show could. While President Trump was received with a grand hero's welcome, Taylor Swift faced a brutal scene of booing. And as almost everyone knows, Swift openly endorsed Kamala Harris, and it seems her fan base isn't as monolithic as she might think it is based upon this reaction. Her reception of the Super Bowl might just be a reflection of how tone-deaf and divisive her political stance has become, and that of other Hollywood celebrities, among the majority of Americans who want a great and restored America after the years of Democrat impotence and woke lunacy.
And yet, on his flight on the way to the Super Bowl, Donald Trump was talking across many different subjects, as he always does. I mean, if the last president was pretty closed when it came to the media, this president is anything but. Any question, it's always a free-for-all. These are always fascinating to watch and to listen to. But he was saying he would impose 25% tariffs on steel, not just from some countries, not just from the countries that the US has a trade deficit with, but from all countries in the world. And of course, that would affect the United Kingdom. 10% of our steel is exported to the United States. Do you think he'll follow through with that suggestion? 25% tariffs on British steel?
Well, the one thing I'm comforted about, and yes, indeed, as you know, that does certainly affect British steel, but the thing that I'm comforted about is that Britain's mainly a services industry and less of a manufacturing. So while it will affect British steel, at least there's that. It may affect Britain less than it affects other trading partners. But, you know, let's see what happens, because it's still early days. And as we know, President Trump gave a reprieve to Mexico and Canada. So let's see what happens. And certainly he's got deep and great affection for the UK, perhaps not for the current Starmer Labour government, but the affection that he has for the UK and the respect that he has for the special relationship could temper that.
OK, well, it'll be certainly one to watch. But for now, Lee Cohen, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us live on Good Afternoon Britain. Now, to end the show, we're going to dip back into the ongoing farmer protests in Westminster. We've been hearing 1,400 tractors have descended across the political capital of the country. And do stay with us here live on GB News. There'll be speeches from all sorts of leading lights in the farming community. We'll be hearing from those whose livelihoods depend on a government U-turn. Will the family farm model survive in the coming decades if these farms aren't able to pass their farms in full on to their children? Well, stay with us here on GB News. Martin Daubney will be picking up the baton next, and indeed Emily Carver will continue reporting live from these protests all afternoon. So don't go anywhere. Your one-stop shop for the farming protests here on GB News.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, I'm here with your latest Met Office weather forecast for GB News. Now, it's going to be pretty cloudy for many of us today and feeling cold too. Even a bit of rain, sleet and hill snow around for some of us. All of this is coming due to an easterly wind that we have coming in due to an area of high pressure over Scandinavia. It's not the strongest easterly wind, but nonetheless it's going to add to the cold feel to things because of the cold air across us and the largely cloudy sky. Some glimmers of sunshine across western Scotland, otherwise it's pretty grey, pretty gloomy. And like I said, there will be some outbreaks of rain, even some sleet and hill snow over the higher ground towards eastern parts in particular. Temperatures are a little bit on the low side, and as I mentioned, that easterly wind, it's not particularly strong, but where you get it, it's going to make it feel even chillier still. As we go into this evening, still clinging on to some clear skies across western parts of Scotland, but I am expecting the cloud to build, to push in as we go overnight. Eastern parts of Scotland seeing some rain, sleet and snow over higher ground as well. A little bit of rain across some parts of Northern Ireland, but nothing particularly heavy. But down the eastern side of England, we are going to have some rain, sleet and snow pushing its way, and even across parts of the southeast. Don't be surprised if we see a little bit of snow falling as we go through this evening, but I'm not expecting much to settle. Drier towards the west, always drier here, but it is going to be pretty cloudy. Like I say, the cloud building from the east as we go overnight. And with that in mind, we are still going to have more damp weather pushing into eastern parts, but with the cloudier skies for many, yes, it is going to be chilly, but temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Low single figures for most of us, perhaps a touch of frost where we do get some clearer skies. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, it's somewhat of a repeat story. Eastern parts again seeing some